What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another blazing Naruto story. What if Naruto was left to starve? Until the spirit of war made him its champion. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description to original creator of this beautiful creation. I had the strangest dream. Now that I think about it, that's what set everything in motion. It was like I saw the history of the world through the eyes of those that had influenced it. A boy named Keldrick, his friend and love, a girl named Ritzia. The seed of a legendary tree, a young spirit, and a holy blade. This was the first of my dreams. What happened in between is of little consequence to my tale. What you do need to know is how this great land, known as the elemental countries, came to exist. In a time long ago, the world known as Fadiel was at war with itself. The result was that important places in the world were sealed into artifacts and scattered. One such artifact released itself at the whim of a greater power. One who would be this power's champion and savior. Everything that was known about this champion has been lost by history. Name, gender, motivation, everything. This champion traveled the world, helping all those who crossed its path. It led the people back into the arms of the Mana goddess by action alone. And when the goddess was once again strong enough, the great tree of Mana reappeared. Her champion scaled the tree and communed with her in the sanctuary. There, they did battle. The champion succeeded in defeating the dark side of the goddess, returning her blessings to the world. The world was forever changed by the journey of this champion, and Fadiel prospered. The spirits of Mana, Undine, Salamander, Gnome, Jinn, Shade, Wisp, Dryad, and Aura spread throughout the world, blessing those they favored with the ability to tap into their powers to control their specific element. It was long before the first great shinobi war that the Mana tree was once again cut down. Nobody but the goddess knows the reason why. This is the world that I was born into, and the world that I must protect. Who am I, you may ask? Naruto. Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto. Let me tell you how I got where I am today. My story begins shortly after I was born. My mother, Kushina Uzumaki, forced into early labor due to the stress of the attack on Konoha, my hometown, by a powerful demon, died shortly after my birth. My father, Namikaze Minato, the fourth Hokage, leader of our village, took me from the hospital. He used me as a medium to seal the demon away, sacrificing his own soul in the process. Thus, I grew up alone and tormented by those who saw me as something I thought long since dead. Running, always running, the young blonde could barely see through the tears in his eyes. The 10th of October, what should be a happy day for all, was one he dreaded the most. It was his birthday, but unlike any other in the village, he was hunted instead of pampered. It was only a year ago that the orphanage he had lived in for the first 3 years of his life had kicked him out. Now, he lived in the streets as a gaunt, blonde specter. Only standing out because of the hideous orange jumpsuit that was all any store would allow him to have. It was especially hard today. Villagers and ninja alike chased him through the streets, brandishing weapons of all kinds. Once they had inevitably caught the exhausted boy, the beating began. It would not stop until the end of that day. Why? Why does everybody hate me like this? What did I do that was so wrong? Crying even harder, the boy blacked out. His senses returned slowly. At first it was touch. He could feel the weight of thin sheets and a lumpy mattress. Next came his hearing, and a strange rhythmic beeping somewhere to his right. With smell came the scent of a sterile environment and, strangely enough, sweet tobacco smoke. This caused him to open his eyes to see the one person in the village who showed any compassion for him. His adopted grandfather, even though the man could not act like one, much as he wanted to. Ji-san, what happened to me? Why am I in the hospital? The boy's voice was weak from starvation and his recent trauma. Sarutobi sighed, thanking the goddess for Inoichi of the Yamanaka clan. He was one of the very few that saw the boy for what he was. You were involved in an accident, and were sent here to recuperate. The doctors say that you should be fine to leave today though. There wasn't much damage done. The lie tasted bitter in his mouth, but it was better that the boy remembered as little of these beatings as possible. Naruto, however, could feel something off about that answer. Hadn't I been chased around by near half the village before you woke up here? Guess that must be when the accident happened. Knowing that it wouldn't help anything to think about it, Naruto switched gears. Hey, Ji-san, Is Asuma-san gonna come today to yell at you for trying to get him to return to the village? Truthfully, he wanted to see Asuma, and to spend time with the aged Hokage. Another reason was that it got him out of the streets where people glared at him constantly. Sarutobi was about to answer, but a loud growl emanating from the boy's stomach cut him off, changing the mood in the room entirely as he laughed and Naruto blushed a deep red. He might Naruto, but before we go there, let's get something to eat. Naruto cheered at this idea and pulled on his newly repaired jumpsuit, which Sarutobi narrowed his eyes at. One of these days, I'm going to take you to find some better cloths than those. The tailors in Suna are amazing, you know. Naruto beamed, tying the jacket of the suit around his waist. The two left the hospital through the window, Naruto riding on Sarutobi's shoulders, and headed to the one place the old man trusted to feed his grandson. Ichiraku Ramen. Tachui had known Minato as one of his best customers, and by some quirk of genetics, it seemed that his son had acquired an even greater addiction to the dish than his father. Ayame was too young to remember anything about the day that the Kyuubi attacked, and her father treated Naruto like family. Well, paying family sometimes. 8 large bowls of ramen later, and Naruto's empty stomach was satisfied for the first time in months, Tachui waving any money offered aside. He hated to see the kid starve, but Naruto was too kind for his own good. He refused free food most of the time, claiming that they would go out of business if they fed him for free as often as it was offered. The Hokage Tower was built on top of a wide stump of some kind of ancient tree, felled long before any currently alive could know. This stump was the reason Konoha was built where it was, seeing as something about it seemed to draw the elemental spirits like a magnet, allowing the surrounding town to grow crops faster than normal. Seeing as it was the central part of the town, it was obvious that the tower should be built on top of it. At the top of the tower, in the Hokage's office, were 3 people. Naruto sat atop the shoulders of a strong young man with slightly long black hair and a habit of chain smoking, who was having a loud argument with the leader of the village. The boy couldn't be happier though. He saw Asuma as an uncle, and every time the man came around, he would tell Naruto stories of the world outside the gates of Konoha. Sometimes, if he was lucky, he would get to hear stories about missions that Asuma had been on. This man, who, under normal circumstances, would be a subpar role model, inspired Naruto with dreams of greatness. It was the dream of the boy to become the strongest ninja ever. Perhaps he would attain the seat of Hokage, but that didn't matter to him as long as he could find and protect as many precious people as he could. To Naruto, that was true strength. Naruto's small moment of familial bliss was broken as a porcelain dog-masked member of Anbu entered the room to give a report on a top-secret mission he had returned from, and he and Asuma were grudgingly dismissed from the room. Asuma, who had other errands he needed to take care of in the village, left Naruto by the entrance to the tower and headed off into town. That was when he heard it, felt it. Something was calling for him. This something yearned to be found, and it was pulling at him to search. Confused, the boy circled the tower, running his hand along the smooth bark of the enormous stump, when his hand seemed to pass right through a portion of it. He tested this, and found a hidden entrance, assuming that it was a fallout shelter of some design. Still curious, he entered the passageway, following the pull as it strengthened. The inside of the stump was a maze, and he was sure he would be lost if not for the constant call leading him in the right direction. Once he reached the center of the maze, he stopped, staring in awe at what he had found. There, in exactly the center of the room he had found, was a magnificent, ornamental sword half buried in the ground, almost as if the tree had sprung from it instead of any seed. His compulsion was at its strongest, and he could not resist the pull. He placed his hand on the hilt of the blade and pulled with all the might his small body could manage. The blade broke free of the earth and wood around it, and once free, shattered into millions of tiny fragments which attached themselves to the boy's hand, forming a thin, skin-tight gauntlet. His compulsion changed to one of sleep, and he lay down, drifting into one of the first truly peaceful respites he had yet. He dreamed of a magnificent tree which spoke to him with a kind, loving voice, and which showed him glimpses into the past. Once the boy was asleep, physical manifestations of the elements began to form in a ring around him. One resembled a mermaid carrying a trident, one a lizard with a flaming spear. Yet another took the form of a small man with a pointed hat from which dangled a red crystal. A sleepy-looking, floating blue entity formed next, and after it came what looked like a tongue of blue-white fire with eyes. Dark, bat-like wings and a single eye comprised the next one, and after it came one that looked like a tree with the face of a woman. The last was a bright golden statuesque figure with eyes. Once all were assembled, the spirit resembling a small man spoke first. "Well, my brothers and sisters, it looks as if the goddess has chosen her next champion. I don't think we need any discussion about whether we help the boy out or not, do we?" All present showed what form of assent they could. "Good. I don't think he would be able to understand what's going on, and it may be a bad idea to explain it to him at this point. Nonetheless, we should assign one of us to watch over the boy until he's ready. Jin, how about you?" The sleepy-looking one nodded, never opening his eyes. "Yes, I believe it would be a job best suited for me at this point. He seems to have a natural affinity for my ilk anyway." Gnome clapped his hands together. "Good. That's settled, let us go about our business as usual. He'll find us when he's meant to." Again, all showed their forms of assent, and all but Jin vanished. Jin, himself, bonded to the gauntlet on Naruto's arm, a small teal gem filling in one of the 8 empty slots on the back of his hand. Naruto awoke refreshed several hours later, never noticing the new silver, gold-accented gauntlet which had covered his right arm to the elbow because, to him, it felt like his normal skin. He made his way out of the maze slowly, absorbed in the memory of his dream. The voice had asked for his love in such a desperate way. It made him happy that it did. For some reason, he knew all that he saw and heard was real. That voice, whoever it was, wanted and needed him. With that thought, he emerged from the base of the stump, smiling. What he saw when he came out confused him though. There, in front of him, were 3 worried faces. Those of Sarutobi Asuma, Yamanaka Inoichi, and strangely enough, Hiyashi Hyuga. It was Asuma that spoke first. "Naruto, there you are. We've been looking all over for you for the last 3 hours. Where in the world did you get off to?" He never let the boy answer, his tirade continuing until the 3 had brought him to the Hokage's office where the 3rd sat behind his desk. "We've found him, finally, Hokage-sama," Inoichi spoke, receiving a relieved sigh from the old man. "Naruto, where did you go?" "It's all right, Ji-san. I just found that hidden bunker under the tower and took a nap, that's all." Naruto was glad to finally be able to speak, but was astounded at the look of surprise on the old man's face. Ji-san? What's wrong? Did I do something wrong?" Sarutobi shook his head, gathering his thoughts. "Could you show me Naruto? I've never even heard about something like that." Naruto cheered, glad to not be in trouble for once, and glad that he had found something new to show everybody. "Yeah, follow me, I think I remember where the door was." 10 minutes later, they had reached the place Naruto remembered entering the base of the tree. The problem was, that the door wasn't there anymore. Getting frustrated, Naruto began to bang on the stump with his right hand, finally drawing everybody's attention to the change, including his own. "Ah, what's this? Ji-san, what's this? I don't remember finding this anywhere, or even putting it on." The boy was beginning to panic, trying to pull the gauntlet from his arm, only to realize that he could feel everything through it, and that it wouldn't even budge. Sarutobi took a long drag on his pipe, blowing the smoke out slowly as Naruto began to calm down again. "I hate to take a Nara's line, but this is going to be troublesome." Naruto gave a dark chuckle. "You know, the whole village hated me until that day. What Hiyashi saw with those eyes of his changed everything for me. Oh sure, everybody still hated me, but the council was dead set on crafting me into a weapon for the village. One without a will of his own, who would kill himself should his master order it. The ninja clans on the council were against the idea though, all of them seemed to be privy to my lineage, even if none of them showed it. I guess I should start where I left off though, shouldn't I?" Back in the Hokage Tower, the man with the sharpest eyes in the village, Hyuga Hiyashi, activated his Byakugan, an ability of the eyes, passed down in his family, to see near 360 degrees, and to see a person's chakra network. Having the fox demon sealed within Naruto's body, his network was already more complex than was normal, but this latest addition had changed things yet again. Naruto's gauntlet had spread its own chakra network into the boy's body. What really shocked him was that this network was pulling the Kyuubi's chakra into the gauntlet, purifying it, then returning it to the demon. Sarutobi knew that he would have to speak with Hiyashi in private about this matter, so he didn't ask. Hiyashi returned his eyes to their normal state, schooling his face back into his usual impassive expression. The boy seems perfectly fine, Hokage-sama. It would seem that this is nothing to worry about for now. The aged Hokage nodded, dismissing the boy once more. Once Naruto had left the room, it was resealed, and Hiyashi gave his report about his findings, as well as his thoughts concerning the strange occurrence. Hokage-sama, I trust you have heard the legend of the Mana Tree, and the Holy Sword of Mana, correct? The old man nodded, allowing Hiyashi to continue. It is said that the stump this building sits atop was once the great tree. I didn't believe any of it until what I saw today. The only way I can think of for the Kyuubi to be purified like this, is to be in direct contact with the sword. If a demon like the Kyuubi, who was thought to be only a legend, can actually exist, can we not say the same can be true with this legend? You may be correct, Hiyashi-san. After hearing the boy's account of things, especially of that dream of his, I can't help but believe the whole thing. However, this will have to be announced to the council, much as I hate to do it to the boy. Who knows, this may just change everybody's opinion of him. Ah, good old Jii-san, ever hopeful that the wishes of my father would one day be fulfilled. A couple weeks passed when one day, I was taken to the council chambers by a group of Anbu. I stood next to Ji-san, confused. What 4-year-old wouldn't be confused at something like that? I'm telling you, no Danzo. The third Hokage was in a rage. His longtime opponent was once again trying to undermine his authority, all for the sake of gaining power for himself. The boy will never be used by you or anyone. Hasn't he suffered enough? He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. Naruto will be admitted to the academy next year, just like every other willing child. He will grow up to be his own person, not some puppet for you to play with. With that, the old man scooped Naruto up onto his shoulders and stormed out of the chambers, with the ninja portion of the council, Danzo accepting, following close behind. It wasn't more than a month later when Naruto awoke to the sound of his rundown apartment crackling in flames all around him. He awoke in a panic, quickly gathering what little important objects he had, and rushed out through the window by breaking through. In his current state, he didn't notice how the flames bent away from him, as if they wanted nothing to do with his suffering. Behind him, he could see a mob of villagers cheering for the certain death of the demon child. He ran as fast as he could, passing through the gates of Konoha before the gate guards could say a word. He didn't stop until he was deep in the surrounding forest. The boy looked around in wonder at the clearing he had found. There stood a single large tree in the center of the clearing. For some reason, a memory of a house built into a large tree, much like this one, entered his mind. He smiled. This could be his place of refuge. He marked the clearing in his mental map before making his way back into Konoha, headed towards the Hokage Tower. Somehow, he managed to avoid being seen by anybody. Even better, he got into the Hokage's office right under the noses of his guards. Right now, he trusted very few people. Oi Ji-san. Naruto announced his presence to the old man in his usual fashion, though more quiet than usual. Sarutobi had the good grace to look surprised at his arrival. Since when did Naruto get so good at sneaking around? Naruto, what are you doing here this late at night? Shouldn't you be in bed? The look on the boy's face told him just about everything, but he still had to ask. What happened, Naruto? You can talk to me. Tears started to run down Naruto's cheeks as he looked into the face of the one he considered his grandfather. Ji-san, they burned my apartment down. They started the fire while I was asleep. They were calling me the demon brat. They wanted me to die. Why? What did I ever do to them? As he spoke, the blonde's tone changed from anguished to enraged, and rightfully so. Just then, Naruto heard a disembodied voice. I believe I can shed some light as to why. Come to me, Kit. Sarutobi leapt from his chair in shock. 1 minute the boy was up and yelling, the next, he had fallen over, seemingly asleep. Naruto, however, had entered into a strange place. He stood ankle-deep in what appeared to be a sewer. Lost, the boy wandered, seeing several doors along the way. Many of these doors were locked though, and the few he could open showed him memories of some of the happier times in his life. We are in your mind, kid. The voice came as if it knew his thoughts. Come to me. Follow my voice. He heard it clearer this time, and followed the passageways until he arrived in front of a large cage. The bars were held together in the middle by a single, flimsy-looking paper seal. This wasn't what surprised him though. Behind the bars was a large, beautiful-looking fox. Its fur was a bright golden color and its eyes were a deep blue, much like his own. Waving gently behind the large fox were 9 tails. The beast sat on its haunches, looking down on him with an almost regal serenity. Who are you? The boy stared up in wonder at the beautiful creature. Kyubi, the fox demon, was the only creature he knew of that would look anything like this, but surely a demon wouldn't look so divine. Once again, as if sensing his thoughts, the creature spoke up. Yes, young one, I am indeed the Kyubi no Kitsune. However, my powers and my very soul have been cleansed by what now resides upon your arm. I can honestly say that I'm grateful for that. The life of a demon is detestable. Kyubi? But everybody was told that the 4th killed you. You're supposed to be dead, aren't you? The fox chuckled to itself. No, young one, that was a lie made to protect you from yourself, and from those your age. The truth was not hidden from the older generation, however, and you have suffered greatly for my past transgressions. I am the very reason that you have suffered all this time. It was an odd sight as the majestic fox bowed low to the ground, its tails hanging low and its ears drooping. Naruto-kun, you may choose what to do with me. As I am now, should you release the seal, my soul will die and you will be free of your burden. If you allow me to live, I will do my best to ease your mental suffering. I will be here as a vast library, all my knowledge open to you along with what power I can give you that will not put strain on your body. I leave the choice to you. Kyubi closed its eyes, awaiting its final judgment. Naruto was reeling. So many questions were answered all at once. His decision was a simple one though. The kind-hearted 4-year-old stepped through the cage, placing his hand on the fox's nose. Kyubi, you seem sorry for everything that's happened, and if I expect to fulfill my dreams with my current situation as it is, I don't think I will get very far. Please, help me. I could use a friend and ally. The fox opened its eyes wide in surprise. It honestly expected the boy to be angry and tear the seal immediately. Are you sure, Naruto? You may never find peace in your life if you make this decision. Naruto merely smiled, stroking its soft golden coat. Yeah, I'm sure. You aren't evil, Kyubi, even if you used to be. Kyubi smiled as best as a fox could. Thank you, Naruto-kun, but from now on, will you please call me Yuko? Kyubi is a title I wish to leave behind. Naruto looked at her, head tilted. Yuko could almost see the gears working overtime. Wait, you're a girl? She sighed, knowing she'd have much to teach the boy in the years to come. Yes, I am. For now though, I think I should let you back out. It would seem Sarutobi-san is worried about you. The next thing he knew, Naruto was staring up into the face of the Hokage. Oh, sorry Ji-san. I guess I'm just tired from everything that's happened today. The blonde stood back up, brushing off his ratty clothing. Ji-san, what I really wanted to talk to you about, before I distracted myself, is that I found a nice place to live in the forest bordering Konoha. I needed to ask for your permission to build a place for myself, away from all of this. He waved his hand to the window that overlooked the city. Don't worry, I'm not gonna run off, and I still want to be a ninja. I just need a peaceful place to live. One where those who don't like me can't find me. I understand, Naruto-kun. I just wish there was more I could do for you. The old man looked down at his desk, frustrated that the council had taken so much power during the aftermath of Minato's death. Most likely due to Danzo's leadership. Naruto smiled at him, shaking his head. Wouldn't want to give you any more trouble than I have to Ji-san. There is something you can do though. In my dreams, or is it memories? I'm not sure anymore. Anyway, long story short, I've been feeling the urge to learn how to run a forge as well as learn to tend a garden. If you could find somebody in the near future that would be willing to teach me, that's all I need. I'll see you in a year, Ji-san. It'll take a long time to build my house the way I want it. With that, the boy slid the window open and ran into the night, leaving a sighing old man. Naruto, I wish you didn't have to mature this quickly. You should have been able to be an innocent child until you were through with the academy. I was just about right when I said it would take a year. I wanted a house like the one I remembered, and building into a tree without killing it is a slow, painstaking job, not to mention that I was very young. I did it though. All through that year I lived in the forest, hunting and foraging for my food. Many times I thought I was going crazy when I would catch a glimpse of strange beings that seemed to vanish before I got even the smallest detail. Yuko taught me a great many things that year as well, from the true history of the world as she had lived it, to how it felt to be with a mother. She had become my family, and together we faced the memories that had been sealed away from me. I held no grudge against those who had sealed them away. In fact, I'm grateful that they did. Without Yuko to help me, I would have been overcome by my emotions. Near the end of the year, she explained the meaning of the strange gauntlet that I would often ask about. What I held was a weakened sword of mana, tired from centuries of giving life to the world around it. Jin made himself known to me very soon after that, feeling that I was finally ready to learn of his existence. That was an interesting day to say the least. It happened when I was taking a break from tunneling into the tree. Naruto was gnawing at a strip of boar jerky, idly wondering about the second mystery of the gauntlet. The strange turquoise stone and the hollows that looked as if they would hold similar stones had always intrigued him. As he looked down at the small stone, he noticed it flash briefly before a strong gust of wind blew by, making him close his eyes to avoid catching dirt in them. Once the gust died down, he opened his eyes again to see a strange sleepy-looking figure floating gently in front of his eyes. "Wa? No. Who are you?" Naruto didn't quite know why, but he knew that this figure was vastly intelligent, as if it had seen all the ages of the world. "Sylph, the rider of the winds. Just call me Sylph though." He cracked his eyes slightly as he spoke, his voice taking on a kind, airy, and sleepy tone. The blonde blinked as he tried to remember where he knew that name from, Yuko giggling to herself in the back of his mind. Suddenly, it hit him. The legend of the mana goddess that Yuko had told him spoke of the elemental spirits. Sylph was the avatar of the wind moon, as well as the strongest of the wind spirits. He realized this and dropped to his knees, bowing low to the mighty spirit. "Forgive me Sylph-sama, I didn't meant to be rude." Sylph merely released an airy chuckle. "Stand up Naruto, I have no need for such respect. Besides, you're more like a partner to me, not to mention that as long as you live, I'm a part of you." This confused Naruto more than he already was. He stood back up though. "Wait, Yuko just said that the sword attached itself to my arm until its strength returned. Sure, it purified her soul, and it's been feeding off our excess chakra to regain its energies, but we didn't sense you at all. I was holding my power away from you until I felt that you were ready to know of my existence. I had sealed myself into that gem, but would not allow my presence to be known until now. Naruto, you didn't find the sword by chance. You have a destiny far greater than you can imagine. The world has strayed from the goddess once more, and she has been consumed by her dark side. If this continues on, the world will descend into madness and destroy itself once again. The goddess called you to the sword, believing that your pure heart can bring the world back to her, and the spirits have agreed to help you in your task. The others will show themselves when they feel you are ready, but be warned, there are some of us who will test you, and the trials will not be easy." The young boy absorbed this information like a sponge, his smile growing wider the more he understood. "So then everything I dreamed was true?" Sylph nodded, closing his eyes again. "You are ready to know your destiny today Naruto, but are far from ready to learn to wield the powers of Yuko, or I don't hurry to grow up, for that hardens the heart. Take your time and enjoy life as much as possible." With a nod from Naruto and another gust of wind, Sylph vanished once more into his gem. From then on, I could speak with Sylph much like I spoke with Yuko. Once he allowed me to sense him, he made his own place in my mindscape. That is another aspect of myself that had undergone changes. Yuko had modified the seal so that she could wander my mind freely, so he had changed my mindscape to a wide green plain. From that day, Sylph became the wind of my mindscape. So it was that I returned to Konoha, my right arm covered by bandages, and wearing crudely fashioned leather clothing. How the people of the village wondered at my appearance. They had gone for so long without seeing the demon brat that they had assumed I was dead. As I wandered through the city, looking about for any changes, Anbu appeared around me. I was far too used to this kind of treatment, so I merely followed them to the place I knew they would take me. Ji-san's office. Naruto, I was almost thinking you weren't going to come back at all. I take it you did what you said you were going to do in the forest? Sarutobi was happy to see the blonde after his absence. He had missed that small ray of sunshine that was Naruto. Hey Ji-san. Yeah, I just finished building last month. I'll let you see it one of these days. It may be a little small, but it's all I need. That's not the reason you had me hauled in her though, is it? Naruto grinned at the Hokage, crossing his arms in front of his chest. No, it wasn't. Remember when I told you that you'd be starting at the academy this year? A nod from the boy told him that it wasn't forgotten. Well, tomorrow is the first day of class, so I expect you to be there bright and early. Also, I took the liberty of ordering this from Suna. I hope it fits well enough. He handed the bundle of cloth over to the blonde who inspected it carefully. Wow, you got the right size somehow. You been keeping tabs on me with that crystal ball of yours? Naruto joked before heading into the Hokage's bathroom to change into his first cloths in years. The shirt was simple and loose with a light, flexible metal plate that came down to his waist and attached to two wide metal plates that covered his hips, but left full range of movement. The pants were wide and flowing, pleated in several places from hip to hem. Oh, his feet were closed-toed shoes that were slightly longer than his feet and curved upwards slightly. He had one glove for his left arm that ended in a tight metal band below his shoulder, and had a long flowing red scarf which he used to partially hide his face from view. He had decided to leave the bandages around his gauntlet, and when he left the bathroom, he bowed to Sarutobi. Thanks G-san, really. I don't think I've ever had more comfortable cloths than these. Sarutobi nodded, pride in his eyes. I paid the tailors in Suna a little extra for continued repair and adjustment. When you need them bigger, just let me know. Naruto nodded. Will do G-san. How about the other thing we talked about though? His answer was a scroll tossed to him. Upon opening it, he saw two addresses. The Yamanaka family will teach you the basics of gardening. It's not really something that can be taught. The head of the Kireru weapons shop has agreed to take you on as an apprentice. You'll work with both after classes on alternating days. Naruto smiled brightly at this. He had been itching to work in a forge for a while. Hi G-san. Is that all then? I want to take a look at the academy. Maybe meet the teachers before I actually attend classes tomorrow. Sarutobi nodded his assent, and Naruto left his office through the window before dropping to the ground. He had already figured out how to use chakra to augment his jumping and to cushion his landings. Once on the streets, he wandered through the town once more, making sure to note the locations of the Yamanaka shop and the Kireru forge. He found the academy and walked in, looking around to find where the teacher's lounge was. Once he found it, he entered cautiously. He was still far too used to adults glaring at him, if not chasing him down with the intent to kill. That wasn't what he encountered here though. All eyes turned to him showed one of three things: respect, confusion, or concern. All except for one silver-haired teacher's assistant whose eyes held an atypical amount of burning hatred. Hello everybody, my name is Uzumaki Naruto. I'm just here to let you all know that, starting tomorrow, I'll be attending classes. Know this, I know exactly who and what I am, and I will take any discrimination problems directly to the Hokage. Treat me like everybody else, and we'll get along just fine. Thank you for your time. With a wave and a bright smile, he left the room. Well, that was different, one pineapple-haired teacher commented before returning to his prep work. Naruto made his way through town slowly, a gentle smile on his face. Even if most people on the street were throwing distrustful glares at him, he was having a good day. That is, until a mob of angry villagers began to form behind him. He chuckled darkly to himself. A year in the forests of Konoha and the spirit of the once demon inside of him had made him wily as a fox himself. Quick as a summer breeze, he vanished into a crowd of people nearby before slipping into an alleyway. From there, he jumped onto the roof of the nearby building, traveling from building to building in such a way that he avoided the eyes of the mob entirely. Once close enough to the gate, he slipped through quietly, returning to his forest haven. A soft chuckle sounded through his mind once he was safe inside his home, and he delved into his mindscape, finding himself in the center of the plain. How did I do, Yuko? She was kneeling in the grass, having taken on her human form, a tall, fair-skinned woman with long blonde hair that ended at her waist. She was wearing a sky-blue kimono that made her cerulean eyes shine brighter. Well, I would say that your escape was just about perfect, but you should have taken more care to avoid being seen in the first place. I'll take that into consideration. I don't want to be invisible though. Tomorrow's going to be a big day, huh? I hope I got the message across to the teachers. Not that I need school for the knowledge when I have you to him? Yuko and Sylph chuckled along with him. However, I don't need my classmates thinking ill of me because of the teachers. After a short chat with the voices in his head as he affectionately called them, he returned to the outside world, opting to get an early night in. The next day, he went with Yuko's advice and made his way to the academy undetected. He even managed to slip into his classroom unseen, 10 minutes before anybody else arrived. He took a seat, watching as his classmates began to filter in. The only two he recognized vaguely were a deep blue-haired girl with pale lavender eyes, which he immediately recognized as a Hyuga. The next was a platinum blonde with blue eyes. Her hair was pulled back in a high ponytail, but she left part of her long bangs unbound to cover her right eye. He placed her as a Yamanaka. The resemblance to Inoichi was too close. Once all the students were in their seats, their teacher made his way to the front of the room to call attendance. Class passed by quickly, their teacher merely explaining what their school life would be like before dismissing them to recess. Naruto went out with the others, but instead of playing, he leafed through the course book that he had been given. Well, until his classmates decided he should play with them. It was a group of boys, a young, feral-looking boy with triangle-shaped red marks under his eyes at the lead, with a chubby kid whose cheeks bore red spiral marks, and a lazy-looking boy with a pineapple hairdo. "Come on kid, let's go play. None of us have seen you around before, and you seem pretty cool, well, not when you just sit and read." The feral boy seemed hard-pressed to say what he really meant, but Naruto understood anyway. "Yeah, I'll play with you guys. I don't know any games though. I've kinda been living on my own." The other boy's eyes went wide at that. "Why man that you don't have parents telling ya what to do all the time?" The blonde looked at him as if examining a new breed of insect. "Is it good to not have parents?" The boys had the good graces to look embarrassed. No, I didn't mean it like that." Naruto chuckled, waving his hand. "It's alright, just try to avoid saying things like that in the future please." That was how he met and befriended Kiba, Choji, and Shikamaru. After school that day, Naruto waved off offers from his new friends to join them for dinner. Instead, he took a winding path through town, leading to the gates so that nobody would follow and find his sanctuary. Ino had gone home immediately after school, excited to talk to her parents about her first day at school. As she and her parents sat down to dinner, Inoichi asked her how her day had gone. "It was great. Our teacher is nice, and the boys in my class are really cute. Especially this blonde kid. He's got these tattoos that look like whisker marks, and his cloths were so cool. I think his name is Naruto or something." Inoichi grinned to himself. So the kid's still around and doing well. That's good to hear. He decided to overlook the fact that she called the boy cute. Little girls change their minds all the time, right? Hinata had a similar experience. For once, her father seemed interested in her life, and she was overjoyed to be able to talk to him like family instead of the clan head. "Well, our class seems to be diverse. Many of the head clans have children of theirs attending this year. There was a boy that I couldn't quite place though." She blushed slightly when she thought about him. Spiky blonde hair and strange whisker marks, like a tattoo or a birthmark. He was very thin, almost like he'd been eating only enough to keep him going. "Uzumaki Naruto?" Hinata nodded, answering her father's question. So he's doing well for himself now." "Hinata, I want you to be kind to that boy. He has already led a more difficult life than most adults. He deserves to have people he can trust." The girl nodded again, and then there was silence. Hiyashi still wasn't too sure how to act around his daughter. Naruto, sitting down to his own Spartan meal, was caught up in a fit of sneezing. Somebody must be talking about me. Probably another mob or something." With a shrug, he dug into the stew he had set cooking before he had left for school that morning. "The first year of school was rough. I was no stranger to hard work, but my schedule kept me running around. I remember my first day of training after I had gotten settled into the school routine. I found myself standing in the front room of the Kireru shop." Naruto looked around in fascination. There were so many different kinds of weapons lining the walls of the shop, all marked with the forge's seal. In fact, the only completely clear area was on and behind the counter where a girl, perhaps only a year older than he, was watching for any customers while her father was tending his craft. She had almond-shaped brown eyes, and held her hair up in two tight buns on top of her head. It was she that spoke first. "Hey kid, I'm not supposed to let anybody younger than Jen in age in. Sorry, but you'll have to leave." The blonde boy was confused. Had they not known he was supposed to work here? "But you're in here. Why can't I be in here too?" She puffed up slightly, pride in her eyes. "Well, that's because my dad owns this place, so I can come in whenever I want." She was cut off from any further bragging when a strong hand was placed on her shoulder. This hand was attached to a man Naruto would have thought of as a giant at his current age. He stood at 6 feet even and was heavily muscle-bound from hefting weighty forge hammers. It was a wonder that he still had his full range of movement. He had dark hair like his daughter, but had it bound in a short ponytail. His eyes were sharp, but kind, and of the same dark brown as his hair. Now Ten-chan, you wouldn't want to send my new apprentice away before I even got the chance to meet him, would you? He turned his gaze to the young boy, a small grin on his face. Well, a bit scrawny, but I guess we all start out that way. I'm Shinrei Kireru, but you'll just call me boss or sensei until I've taught you all I can. Now that that's out of the way, time to clean shop. Tenten watched as the boy followed her father back into the forge room, a look of confusion on her features. A shrimp like that is Dad's apprentice? He won't last a week. At the forge, Shinrei tossed a shovel to the boy, pointing at the dying embers. Alright, your first job is to shovel it out. You don't get to do anything else but shovel and watch until you get some meat on your bones, and I'm satisfied that you're an apt learner. If you're lucky, I may just let you haul in the raw materials from time to time. With a grin and a salute, Naruto set himself to work, vaguely recalling the memory of a short man under a very large horned helm that had worked the goddess's former champion to the bone while teaching his craft. After cleaning the fire pit, Shinrei helped him prepare for the next day, stacking dry wood beside the pit. It wasn't until late that evening when he was allowed to leave, sore from shoveling and carrying heavy logs. Still, he made his way back to his forest sanctuary, undetected as usual, and dug into the meal he had set to cook while he was away. He took an hour's time for meditation, speaking with Jin and Yuko without distraction, before crawling into bed and passing out immediately. Outside of his window, 7 small figures looked in on the sleeping figure. Well now, it looks me like our lad's growing up good and strong in mind and body. In a few years, he just might be ready to take on his full burden. Arg, you take things too slow. I say we should just talk to him in the morning. The sooner he gets training, the better for everybody. Cool it, hothead. We agreed that we'd only show ourselves when he was ready. Jin was alright only because he is the most suited for the boy. His body would reject the rest of us outright as it is now. There is only so much room for power before a breaking point is reached. It would be wise to wait until the first stage of manifestation takes place before another of us even makes contact. Goldie is right, you know. Yes, I think 2 or 3 more years will be enough. Besides, the sword isn't strong enough yet to hold more than just Jin. Now, even so, we should decide who will be next to join him. Morning came quickly for Naruto, but he always considered that a good thing. It meant that he could take one more step closer to his dreams. There was a substitute for their class that day though. The silver-haired teacher whose eyes held so much hatred for him had taken charge that day, and upon realizing which class he had that day, handed out a surprise quiz. His, though, was under the most subtle of genjutsu which rendered the text all but illegible to him. Needless to say, Mizuki graded the tests in front of the entire class, writing the results on the board for everyone to see. All but Naruto's friends laughed and taunted him, one dark-eyed boy, beloved by the majority of girls in the class, taking the opportunity to call him Dobi, a nickname that would stick with him for the rest of his school career. Naruto was strong though, so he soldiered on through the rest of the day, enduring harsh comments about his intelligence and lack of parentage, as well as being physically humiliated by the loathsome silver-haired substitute when the time for their taijutsu lessons. Every time something needed demonstrating, Mizuki would choose the boy and attack him without mercy. It didn't make matters any better that he was still sore from working the night before. Finally, class was over. Choji, Shikamaru, and Kiba made sure Naruto was doing well before they headed home, having academy homework and an early curfew set by their parents. The blonde left the academy, slowly walking towards the Yamanaka shop while thanking the goddess for Yuko. She had been healing his body slowly over the course of the day so as to not arouse suspicion from his classmates. Somehow, he didn't notice the shy girl trailing him, a soft blush on her face as she tried to gather the courage to talk to this one boy. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out from her hiding place, throwing caution to the winds. Naruto-san? May I talk with you for a while? The blonde turned on his heel, surprised to see her out of class, but even more surprised that Konoha nobility would bother with someone like him. No, they're not all like that. Hiyashi-sama was nice to me before. He pointedly ignored the tutting noise Yuko was making at him for letting his guard down for so long. Good evening Hinata-sama. I have somewhere I need to be, but if you would like to walk with me, I would enjoy the company. He bowed slightly, unsure of how to act around somebody like her. She nodded, her blush deepening as she walked beside him. Don't think what Mizuki-sensei did to you today was fair. Naruto shrugged, flashing his Cheshire grin. Thank you for your concern Hinata-sama, but I've had far worse. A little bit of hazing isn't going to dampen my spirits. He pumped his bandaged right arm into the air to emphasize his point. Hinata smiled as well, finding it hard to resist joining in his enthusiasm. Naruto-san, circa. Could you just call me Hinata-chan? I don't see myself as above you, so. The blonde nodded, stopping a few feet from the door to the Yamanaka store. Sure, but only if Hinata-chan will also agree to be more familiar. He smiled again before nodding at the shop. This is my stop though. Guess you could call it a part-time job. He waved before entering the store, the bell over the door tinkling. The lavender-eyed girl gave a short bow. Think I can do that nah. Naruto-kun. She waved back to him before setting off towards the Hyuga compound, lost in her thoughts of having found her first friend. Again, Naruto was treated to the sight of a girl about his age sitting behind a counter, looking bored out of her mind. This time though, it was the blonde daughter of Inoichi, Ino Yamanaka. She looked up to see him enter, and put on her brightest of smiles. Hi there Naruto-kun. Daddy just told me today that Hokage-sama set you up with a part-time job here to learn how to garden. I didn't even know boys liked flowers. He scratched the back of his head, grinning. Hey Ino-chan. It's more like learning to grow produce actually. Not that I don't like flowers or anything, but when you live on your own. Ino was about to ask another question, but her mother's voice stopped her. Ino, honey, I'm sure you'll talk about it when he's ready, but not a moment before. Besides, we have to get him started, don't we? She turned to look at Naruto, smiling brightly. So nice to meet you Naruto-kun. Inoichi has told me a lot about you. I'm Reina, Ino's mother. Now then, let's get started. How much do you know already Naruto-kun? The work that day was similar to the work he did at the forge. He shoveled dry dirt and plant matter into compost heaps to make good soil for the greater part of the day. Reina wouldn't even think about letting him leave until he had sat down to dinner with their family, something which Ino was ecstatic about. On his way home, he had the cover of darkness, once again leaving the gates of Konoha for his own forest sanctuary where he spoke with Yuko and Jin for a little while before finishing what little homework he had and turning in for the night. This was my life now. Whether I was at the forge, the flower shop, or school, I always had people around me who cheered me on. Hinata, Ino, and I became close as could be. Ino and Hinata balancing each other out. Now Hinata could talk confidently without a single stutter, and Ino could control her temper. I also, somehow, gained a rivalry with the dark-eyed boy named Sasuke Uchiha. It was just another day in class, late in our first year. To see how far we had come along, our sensei was pitting members of the class together in taijutsu spar sessions. Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki, you're up. The teacher was beaming at the raven-haired prodigy. Even if they had come to accept Naruto for the most part, many of the teachers still favored those with clan bloodlines, going so far as to give them special attention. The boys stepped into the ring, Sasuke falling into his clan's basic stance while Naruto stood with his hands at his sides. What's wrong Dobi? You already forgot how to fight, or do I just scare you with how good I am? This, of course, brought squeals from the Sasuke fan club. Naruto, however, smiled. Why should I be scared Teme? I've yet to see you do anything impressive. Finally, he shifted his stance to something only his friends had seen him practice. He stood with his feet firmly rooted, yet somehow, managed to have a fluid grace at the same time. Kobushi no Sakai Ryu. Kazenagare. Fist of the world, Windstream. Ooh, this is gonna be good. Give that bastard hell buddy. Kiba roared from the sidelines. Shikamaru only smiled knowingly along with Hinata and Ino. Choji had decided to pay a little more attention to this fight than his bag of chips. Just so you know, this is the first time I've tried this style in actual practice. Try to stay up so I can have a bit of fun teme? This had the desired effect. Angry at being taunted, Sasuke charged forward, feinting with a left cross before shifting his weight into a kick with his right leg instead. Naruto flipped onto his hands to avoid the kick, springing into the air and twisting his body to land a kick on the back of Sasuke's skull, knocking him out in one shot. Ah, damn, I thought I told you to stay up. I really wanted to test out a few more attacks. Ah well. Naruto walked out of the ring, towards his group of friends, giving them a thumbs up, while the Sasuke fan club screeched in horror. One pink-haired banshee, the leader of the pack, tried to talk the teacher into punishing Naruto. Hey, he didn't even use Academy Taijutsu, and he hurt Sasuke-kun. You said no excessive force, sensei. Ah, Haruno-chan. Sasuke was also using non-basic taijutsu. Besides, he's fine. See, he's already waking up. I'm not going to punish a student for excelling. Indeed, Sasuke had sat up, glaring daggers at the back of the blonde's head. Oi, Dobi, what the hell was that? How dare you have that kind of power? I demand a rematch. Unless that was just dumb luck and you're too scared to actually fight me. Naruto chuckled, turning to look the other boy in the eyes. No, I'm not scared at all, Teme. Right now, you're below my level, and I really don't want to hurt you too badly. A wise person once said that unnecessary fighting only leads to further chaos, or something like that. You should mind your pride. Someday it will get you in trouble. The bell rang out for classes to end, so Naruto bid his friends farewell, promising to see Ino and Hinata for dinner. The two were spending the night at Ino's that day, and Reina was making ramen, which assured the young boy's attendance. First, though, he had to work at Shinrei's place. He was greeted there, as usual, by Tenten. Hey Naruto. Dad's in the back again. I think he's gonna teach you something new today. Something about the mana elementals or something. I couldn't really understand. She went back to flipping through a weapons magazine while he went in the back. There Shinrei was, and laid out on the heavy workbench were several types of materials. Ah, there you are kid. Time to start learning how to do something besides stoke the fire. Did you know that you can make a weapon out of things other than metal? Of course, it all depends on what you're making. Take a set of knuckles for example. Sure, you could use cloth or metal, but you can also use wood, bone and stone. Of course, even though you technically can use such things, it's not always advisable. Keep in mind that whatever you're making has to have the right type of strength to hold up to the beating it'll get in the field. Also, the kind of material you choose has its own elemental affinities. That's why it's important for those who utilize elemental chakra to choose their weapons carefully. Should they choose a weapon of the wrong material, their jutsu could be weaker, not work at all, or at the worst, backfire completely. All that day, he spent memorizing what could make which weapons, and the affinities that weapon would have. At the end of the day, Shinrei pointed to an ingot of black metal. Good, you've just about got it all. There's one more thing though. This is a rare metal that we call chakra steel. Even though it has no luster, its worth is far more than that of gold or platinum. This steel is attuned to all of the elements, but it's so rare that weapons made out of it can fetch up to a year's worth of Anbu pay. With this metal, you can also store the essences of the elementals, making the steel even stronger. To do so though, you would need to have access to mana crystals. That's enough rambling from me though. It's late, go on home and get some sleep. He left the shop with his mind full of possibilities. In his mind, he had already begun to design the perfect weapon for himself. No doubt that's exactly what Shinrei wanted to happen. Once he arrived at the Yamanaka house, he shook the thoughts out of his head so that he could have a nice meal with his friends. After the first 2 years, I had learned just about everything I could from Reina-san, but she insisted that I show up for dinner at their place after working with Shinrei every day. It was only my last year of school that I was allowed to try my hand at the forge, making simple kunai at first. Apparently, I had talent though, because Shinrei gave me a heavy ingot of chakra steel for my birthday that year, telling me to make weapons of my own. He said that he had that much faith that I would graduate. That year, after months of work, I created what I had been designing in my head all those years. I named it Tsukihitsume because, even though I forged it from black steel, it glowed like the moon. Moonfire Claw. Also, that last year of school, my sensei was one who I will always respect. His name was Iruka Amino, and he was one of the very first people to accept me for who I was. The greatest tool of a ninja is that of deception. That's what Iruka taught me. I began to shroud my potential away from the rest of the class, especially Sasuke. Over the years, he had begun to slip into insanity. The death of his clan made him hunger for power. Inoichi had tried to lock away the worst of those memories, but watching his family die at the hands of his brother for 24 hours under the spell of the Mangekyo Sharingan proved too strong a memory. Graduation day came soon enough for us all. Iruka was making an attempt to calm our unruly class. Finally, he had to resort to his patented demon head technique, instantly quieting the entire room. Good, now I can hear myself think. Now, the tests will consist of a written portion, an athletics portion, and a jutsu test. I expect all of you to do your very best. Now, begin the written test, you have an hour. Naruto flipped the page over, grinning. He realized that, yet again, a genjutsu had been cast on his test. However, he hadn't been studying for nothing. Spiking his chakra ever so slightly, he broke the illusion without alerting his classmates. After that, the test was fairly easy for him. He had even flat out refused help from Yuko the few times he got stuck. Before the hour was up, he had set his pencil down and propped his feet up on the desk, earning glares from both Uchiha and Haruno. What's that baka Naruto doing, finishing before Sasuke-kun? I bet he just gave up because it was too hard. Yeah, nobody could do better than Sasuke-kun. The pink-haired girl shot the blonde one last glare before returning to her usual routine of staring at Sasuke. Said boy was raging to himself as usual though. That idiot, how the hell can he be that much better than me? He's not even from a clan. He should just be useless fodder. Alright, time's up, head outside. Make sure you all have your equipment for the exam. Iruka made his way around the desks, gathering the tests. Naruto stood, making sure his utility pouches and kunai holsters were in place before strapping Tsukihitsume to her place at his left hip. He caught up with his friends, and together, they went out to the field. Oi, Naruto, I've been wondering about something for a long time now. Are you a burn victim or something? You've always had your arm bandaged up for as long as we've known you. What's up with that man? Kiba was trying to get Naruto to take off the bandages, while Naruto was avoiding Kiba's hands. My little secret man. For now, you'll just have to wait until I have a reason to show you. Kiba crossed his arms in defeat, puffing his cheeks out comically. Well, if you aren't gonna tell me that, at least tell us where you live. We tried following you home one night, but you kinda disappeared somewhere around. He was cut short by Ino's fist colliding with the top of his head. Baka, you weren't supposed to say anything. Naruto chuckled at the antics of his friends. Kiba and Ino were fighting. Shikamaru was watching the clouds, a single, troublesome, escaping his lips. Choji was trying to avoid suspicion by burying his face in his ever-present bag of chips, and Hinata was poking her fingers together shyly. Well, I guess I have been a bit too secretive about that, huh? Tell ya what, after we all graduate, I'll take you all to my place. He pulled Hinata's hands apart, smiling at her. Don't worry about it, alright? Well, isn't this touching? It's the Dobi Brigade. Why don't you and your whore get a room? Sasuke strode up to the group, fan club in tow. Or is it that you like that mutt boy better? I never knew you were like that. Naruto lifted one eyebrow, looking at the boy with a puzzled expression. I think you've got your wires crossed, Teme. You have how many girls that follow you around everywhere, and have you even considered a single one of them? With your obsession over being better than me, I might just think that you've got the hots for me. Sasuke's face turned red at his own comment being thrown back at his face, and was just about to react when Sakura decided to chime in. Ino pig, how can you even hang around an idiot like Naruto? Sasuke is so much better than him in every way. Sakura once again tried to make her one-time friend see the light that was the last Uchiha. Ino merely scoffed at the idea. How can you say he's an idiot when he's at the top of the class? Just because he doesn't flaunt his skill like Sasuke, that doesn't mean that he's any weaker. If anything, it makes him that much better. Sakura was stumped. She hadn't even taken the time to think about that. All she knew and cared about was that Sasuke didn't like Naruto. Well, he's still cooler and cuter. I bet if they got into a serious fight, Sasuke would win hands down. Satisfied that she had won the argument, she turned to see Iruka walking towards them with the rest of the class in tow. Alright, are you all ready for this part? First up is target practice. Sasuke, you first. Sasuke performed well as usual, managing to hit all of the targets, save one, dead center without making it look difficult. Once he had gathered his kunai and got out of the way, Iruka called the next person out. Hinata and Ino, who had been practicing together with Naruto and the others, managed to hit all but two of the moving targets. Shikamaru matched Sasuke's score, much to the outrage of the ever-present fan club, and Kiba and Choji managed to miss 4 and 3 targets respectively, their forte being close combat. As usual, Naruto was close to the last of the batch. He made his way to the line, shooting Iruka a confident grin. "Sensei, are we required to use basic projectiles? I have something that I want to try out." Iruka raised one eyebrow. "Sure, as long as it's a throwing weapon, it's fair game. Are you sure you want to try out something new on your graduation test though?" Naruto only grinned wider in answer, reaching into one of his pouches to pull out several mini chakrams, throwing them all at the same time. At first, it looked like he threw them all in the wrong direction, but they hooked in at the last second, leaving long gashes through the center of each target before flying back to the blonde who caught them effortlessly. Well, they may not do quite as much damage as shuriken or kunai, but when you know how to use them, it's hard to lose any. He grinned again, rubbing the back of his neck as he heard Hinata, Ino, and Kiba cheering that he beat Sasuke. "Come on, that's just unnecessary, guys. Being happy for me is fine, but we don't need to sink to his level, do we?" They had the good graces to look embarrassed, which only made him chuckle. "Naruto-kun, do you think you could teach us how to use those throwing weapons? Something like that has to be good for combat," Hinata asked with a blush. She may have lost her stutter, but she still had a hard time talking to him without blushing. He could never quite figure out why, while Yuko always seemed to know something that she wouldn't tell him. "Yeah, I think so. It takes a little more control and concentration because you have to throw them just right to get them to come back. I think everybody could pick it up though." Shikamaru decided to speak up for once, catching Naruto's attention. "It's troublesome to ask, but can I see your palm, Naruto? The way you caught those, you should have cut yourself up pretty bad." Naruto grinned, holding his bandaged palm out for him to see. "Nah, don't worry about it. See, I'm alright." He didn't realize that Shikamaru had been fishing for a hint at what was under his bandages, and managed to get quite a bit. Now all he had to do was start fitting the pieces together. Of course, that would require quiet time to think, something he wouldn't have for a while. The sparring test followed soon after. Mizuki was the proctor for the exam, and Iruka explained that the students had to last as long as they could against him. The minimum time to pass was 1 minute. Of course, once again, Sasuke was first. After an ego stroking by his fan club, and Mizuki pulling all of his punches, he lasted for double the necessary time. Ino had managed to last the time limit, just barely. Hinata excelled, employing her clan's Juken style with practiced ease. Shikamaru, Kiba, and Choji all passed as well, managing to avoid or block Mizuki most of the time. When Naruto was finally called, he could see the glint in the silver-haired teacher's eyes. Over the years, he had come to distrust Mizuki, and now he could tell that the man was going to go all out in an attempt to make him look like a fool. Naruto stepped into his Kobushi no Sakai stance, smiling confidently. If there was one thing Mizuki couldn't stand, it was the demon brat looking happy. So strong was his urge to put the boy in his place, that he charged in, attempting to incapacitate Naruto immediately. However, the boy took hold of Mizuki's fist as it came towards him, redirecting the momentum from it through his body to flow around the man's left side, bringing his elbow crashing into Mizuki's ribcage, effectively winding him. Backing off to run the clock, Naruto used the remaining momentum to handspring backwards, landing in his solid stance. Mizuki had other plans though. Unnoticed by anybody but Naruto, the older man now had thin blades between each of his fingers, leering at the boy. "Is that the best you've got? Come on, let's try that again." Deciding to take the offensive for once, Naruto slid into an aggressive stance, charging forward. Thinking he had the upper hand, Mizuki went for Naruto's face, only for the boy to tumble into a tight ball before springing his body outwards, catching the man under the chin with a kick, knocking him out of the ring. Iruka beamed from outside of the ring, holding his hand up to signal the end of the match. "I can't believe I'm saying this during a test bout, but that's a ring out on Mizuki. Naruto takes the highest grade so far with the only win. The school bell rang out, signaling that it was time to break for lunch. Iruka sent them all on their way, reminding them that they needed to show up at the classroom in an hour to take their final test. 10 minutes later, Naruto's group could be seen at Ichiraku Ramen, Naruto's favorite place to eat. The others could still only watch in awe as their friend consumed impossible amounts of ramen at high speed, while they all took their time eating. "Hey, Naruto, looks like you've got the top grades so far, huh? Damn man, if I could pull half the stuff you did today." Kiba stopped talking to drain the broth from his bowl, sighing with satisfaction. "Troublesome. You don't really expect us to believe that this was the first time you've used those chakrams, do you? Also, with your schedule, when do you even have time to practice that style of yours?" Once again, the brain of Shikamaru was actively gathering information on his enigma of a friend. Naruto polished off his 8th bowl of ramen, stacking the empty bowl with the rest. I wonder. Yes, I do practice with the chakrams, but as for my style, I just kinda do what I feel like. I only gave it a name to make it sound cool. Well, not really. I do get a lot of practice in the mindscape, and I'm constantly taking advice from Jin. Can't tell them that yet though. He hoped he had made his lie believable, and Shikamaru didn't pursue the conversation any further. Soon enough it was time to head back to class for the final test. Once all of them were seated and quiet for a change, Iruka outlined the final portion of their exam. "You've all done splendidly so far. For the final segment, you will have to pass a jutsu test. You will demonstrate the basic jutsu you have been taught in school. Kawarimi, Henge, and Bunshin. Enter the room when your name is called, perform, and then head outside." First up is Shikamaru. The lazy genius waved to his friends as he went into the room. Those who were left made themselves comfortable and quiet. Naruto and his friends spoke with each other using a form of sign language they had created over the years. "How do you think Shika will do?" came Ino's question, addressing the group as a whole. "Lazy's smart, even if he doesn't like to show it. He'll pass this one easily. How about you Kiba, you still having trouble with the henge?" Naruto looked pointedly at his feral friend. "Don't worry about me, I've got it now. What about you? Last I checked, you couldn't pull off a bunshin to save your life." The only reply he got to this before being called, was Naruto tapping his temple, grinning. One by one they filed into the next room until it was finally Naruto's turn. On the only table in the room rested a lineup of height 8 with the emblem of Konoha engraved on them. Behind the table sat Iruka and Mizuki. "Alright Naruto, let's see what you've got. Henge first." With a nod, Naruto ran through the simple set of seals, a small smokescreen appeared, and there stood a perfect replication of the 4th Hokage, grinning confidently. Another poof of smoke, and Naruto was back to normal, grinning at a glowering Mizuki. "How dare that demon taunt us by taking our hero's form? If he passes this test, that's what I'll do." Mizuki grumbled to himself as he wrote his evaluation. Putting on a friendly face, he looked back up. "Good, next perform the kawarimi with the log in the far corner." Again, the boy performed the jutsu flawlessly, replacing himself with the log and then switching positions again. Instead of waiting for Iruka to tell him to continue, he blurred through yet another simple set of seals and produced 5 perfect clones of himself. "So, do I pass or what?" Iruka laughed as he tossed one of the height 8 to Naruto who caught it, tying it around his bandaged forearm. "Thanks. Guess I'll see you tomorrow for team assignments." Later Iruka-sensei, Mizuki-sensei. Pulling his scarf over the bottom half of his face, Naruto exited the room and went outside, giving his friends a thumbs up. "Well guys, looks like we all made it huh? Wonder what kind of team we'll be on though. All I hope for is that I don't get stuck with the Uchiha. I don't think I could handle dealing with a broody power-hungry bastard like him for much longer than a few days. I've already had more than enough of him challenging me daily, and stalking me to figure out how I train. Speaking of stalking though, I guess it's time I showed you guys my pad, huh? Shinrei-sensei's given me the day off." With a wave, he bade them to follow, and together they left through the gates, much to the surprise of his friends. "Wait, when we followed you last time, we lost you around the shopping district. Now we're out in the middle of the forest?" Choji looked around as if expecting an ambush of some kind. "Yeah, I normally take a roundabout way through Konoha before leaving. I'm sure you've noticed the glares I get in the mobs that tend to form behind me. Well, let's just say there's a reason for everything, and that's the reason why I live out of the public view." Yet another one of my hated secrets that I'll tell you later. After another few minutes of traveling, the group arrived in Naruto's clearing. Mouths agape once they realized exactly where his house had been built. You built into a tree? How did you manage to do that without killing it? In fact, the tree looks healthier than the ones that we tend. Ino ran her hand over the rough bark of the tree, marveling at Naruto's expertise. Not quite sure exactly how I did it, but it works. All I can say is that I carved in very slowly and very carefully over the course of most of a year. What are we all doing standing outside though? Come on in. The blonde opened his door to his guests, ushering them inside where they sat at a low table, carved, once again, by Naruto himself. He went to a kettle of water he usually had over the fire and made tea for his friends before seating himself with them. So guys, what'd you think? Pretty nice, huh? The group stayed there for a while, until deciding that they should get home and sleep before team assignments the next day. Each of them made Naruto promise that they could visit him there every now and then, even though he had already offered his home as a place for them to rest whenever they needed to get away from it all. However, it still felt too early to sleep, so he decided to take a walk through the woods. It was during this walk that he saw something that surprised him. There, in a small clearing, stood Mizuki with a large scroll strapped to his back. Mizuki-sensei, what are you doing out here so late at night with such an important-looking thing? Naruto must have caught the silver-haired man off guard, because when he turned around, his eyes were wide in shock. Naruto-kun, what are you? No, this is perfect. I get away with the forbidden scroll, and you take all the blame. Suddenly realization hit him. He had seen that scroll several times when he had visited the third Hokage, and he knew what kind of secrets it contained. So, I knew you were a bastard Miskateme, but I never pegged you as a traitor. You've been caught though. Why don't you hand me the scroll before I'm forced to take it from you? Mizuki was no fool. He knew that Naruto had been holding much of his ability back the entire time at the academy. In fact, there was only one thing he could think of to try to get out of the situation without being caught either by the blonde or by Anbu if he was stalled for long enough. Hey, Naruto, you want to know why everybody in the village hates you? You want to know why they call you a demon child and hide their own kids when you walk by? What everybody has told you about the Kyuubi is a lie. The fourth didn't kill that monster, instead he sealed it into the body of a baby. That was you. You're the reincarnation of the Kyuubi. The boy merely looked at the older man with a sly grin. What, you think I didn't already know that I'm the jailer of the Kyuubi? She's really not as bad as you might think. In fact, because of this, she's not bad at all. He tore the bandages from his arm which he had worn to cover the brilliant silver gauntlet for several years. Not that you would know what it is, but that's not really important. As a shinobi, it is my duty to punish traitors like you. Naruto drew Tsukihitsume from his left hip, the normally black blade glowing like its namesake in the silvered hand of the boy. The light seemed to follow the blade like a flame, or the tail of a comet as he stepped into a modified Kobushi no Sakai Ryu stance, the blade held behind his back in a reverse grip. I'll let you be the first to see this. You should feel honored. Ken no Sakai Ryu. Kido no Yasei. An Sword of the World, the Wild Path. He dropped his stance lower, one palm touching the ground while the other hand held the glowing blade behind him, eyes always locked in his opponent. After you, traitor. Make it good. Mizuki, once again goaded into making the first move, decided to hurl one of the giant shuriken on his back at the boy before charging in its wake. Naruto quickly assessed the situation before his body flowed smoothly through his attack. First, he pushed off with his legs, pivoting his body over his wrist to bring his blade against the large shuriken, cutting through the softer metal with ease. Then, bringing himself to his feet, he whirled about, leaving a wide gash across Mizuki's chest. Coming full circle, he planted his foot against the center of the wound, laying the man out on the turf. Sighing to calm himself, Naruto cleaned his blade before sheathing it respectfully. Not what I would expect from somebody of your level. You really shouldn't underestimate any opponent, no matter what age he or she is. Liberating the large scroll from Mizuki's prone form, he unfurled an arm's length, scanning the first few techniques quickly. Cage Bunshin? That could be useful. Just after he had committed the jutsu to memory, Iruka showed up with a stern look on his face. Naruto, why would you run off with the forbidden scroll like that? Moreover, how did you even know where to find it? Iruka watched the blonde's face go from puzzled to a look of deep understanding in a matter of seconds. I promise sensei, I had nothing to do with this. I believe that Mizuki Teme must have used a high-level henge to disguise himself as me and take the scroll from Ji-san. He must have been studying my behavior in class very carefully over the years. At any rate, I intercepted him right here just minutes ago, realized what he was carrying and took it back. You may want to get him to a hospital though. I'll leave this with you. You'll be able to get it back more easily than I would. Alright, it's hard to believe that Mizuki would turn traitor like this though. One question though, what were you doing out here at this time of night? Naruto? Iruka looked back up from the prone body of his one-time teammate to see that the boy had vanished into the night, soundless as one of the animals that thrived in the woods. In the Hokage tower, seated behind his desk, the third Hokage sat, peering deeply into the crystal ball he used regularly to look into village affairs. He grinned behind intertwined fingers, having followed the exploits of his grandson the entire day. Of course he knew that it was Mizuki who had taken the scroll. He had also known that he would pass through Naruto's territory, and had faith that the boy would stop him. He had also planned on Naruto reading through the scroll. His plan to hand over the Kage Bunshin technique had gone exactly like he planned. He wasn't considered the greatest ninja in the village for nothing. Naruto awoke early that morning, as usual, and made his way outside to warm up for the day. With Yuko coaching him from within his mind, the boy ran through several kata from Kido no Yasei, not that kata were terribly important to the style. All the same, he had to keep his body limber enough to keep up with the style. It was in the middle of his practice that he chuckled, flipping the black Tsukihitsume around his newly bandaged right hand before sheathing her. Alright guys, you're really going to have to try a lot harder if you don't want to be noticed. Come on in, breakfast is probably just about ready. He threw a towel over his shoulder, partially covering his bare chest which rippled with strong, yet incredibly lean muscle. A product of all his work in the forge, and near constant ninja training, and walked toward the entrance of his home. His entire group of friends filed out of the surrounding woods, both Hinata and Ino sporting deep blushes which they tried to conceal before following their friend inside. I didn't expect you guys to show up this early in the morning. Hoping to catch me sleeping or something? Naruto, still dressed in loose training cloths, began to set the last bits of breakfast on the table. He had been practicing with shadow clones as well that morning, thus the breakfast, and was pleasantly surprised that he was able to remember every little thing his clone had done before it had dispersed. Kiba grinned, digging into a helping of home-smoked bacon. Nah, we know you train at ungodly hours of the day. How else would you have the time to work on that funky style? OWW. The feral boy rubbed the top of his head, shooting a glare at Ino who was shaking her own. In other words, Shika figured it out and told us, the other blonde deadpanned. Naruto laughed, gently slapping their lazy friend on the back. That's Shikamaru for ya. I swear, throw this guy a couple of hints, and he could figure out just about anything. I'll bet that he's already figured out one or two of my little secrets, and is just waiting for the right time to bust them wide open. Hopefully not before I get to it though. He chugged down a blend of juice from various forest fruits that he was partial to before slapping the table with his regular hand. Alright, it's just about time for assignments. I'm going to go get dressed, so I'll be back down in a little while. Don't wreck the place while I'm not here. Stretching, the boy made his way upstairs, quickly changing into his usual clothing. Meanwhile, downstairs, Shikamaru was in the middle of being interrogated by his friends who wanted to know everything that had been found out about their blonde host. The only one not badgering him was poking her fingers together, desperately trying to hold herself back from using her clan's Byakugan eye to take a peek upstairs. Ma, I haven't actually figured anything out entirely yet. I have several theories as to what's under those bandages, but that's about as far as I've gotten. You all know how he keeps to himself with things like that, and Hinata respects his privacy too much to peek underneath. We might just have to actually wait until he decides to tell us. Troublesome person. They all knew the conversation was over when he grumbled about something being troublesome, so they left him alone. Kiba and Choji continued to dig into what little food was left on the table while Shikamaru leaned back and closed his eyes. Hinata and Ino were off in the corner, giggling about something. Naruto came back down just in time to stop Choji from raiding his smokehouse in search of more food, and together they walked back through the thick woods towards the gates of Konoha, easily slipping through under the noses of the guards. There were also the usual glares thrown in their direction, and many of them could hear comments like, "tainted by the demon," thrown around. Villagers were not well known for tact. Something about hearing that comment for the umpteenth time clicked in Shikamaru's head though. God, sometimes I think the people of this village have black and white mixed up. So troublesome. They worship that Uchiha, even though he's rotten to the core, yet they claim Naruto is a demon. Demon? No, it couldn't be, could it? I'll have to seriously look into this when I get the chance. It might just shed some light on a few mysteries. The blonde in question waved his hand over his friend's eyes in an attempt to catch his attention. Yo, hey, Shikamaru, get your head out of the clouds for once. We're here. After snapping the lazy boy out of his thoughts, they filed into the classroom, sitting at their usual places. Iruka stepped into the room, closing the door behind him, and stood at his podium with a stack of folders. Alright, welcome and congratulations on making it to team assignments. I'm going to announce the teams. You will be working in 3-man squads under a Junin sensei. Squad 1 is. Every student paid rapt attention to the assigning, Naruto's group holding their breaths while hoping that none of them were assigned to the Uchiha's team. Team 7 will be Sasuke Uchiha, Sakura Haruno, and Shikamaru Nara. You will be training under Kakashi Hitaki. Sakura seemed to be the only one happy with that arrangement, cheering that she was on the team with her Sasuke-kun. Sasuke grumbled under his breath, shooting a glare at Naruto. He was angry that he wouldn't be able to see exactly how the blonde had gotten so good. Shikamaru uttered a single, troublesome, while being patted on the back by a relieved Naruto. Ah, tough break buddy. The odds were good that one of us would get stuck with him though. I don't need to remind you though, teamwork is key. No matter if those two want to do things their own way, you need to cram the idea of teamwork into their heads. Satisfied that the class had quieted down enough, Iruka continued. Team 8 is Naruto Uzumaki, Hinata Hyuga, and Ino Yamanaka. Junin sensei is Asuma Sarutobi. Both girls cheered while Naruto smiled. Alright, that's a good team. I'm a power player, but Hinata will be an excellent tracker, and Ino can be a brilliant strategist. Maybe not up to Shika's level, but still quite good. I object. Sensei. Why does that loser get to be on a team with the 2 best kunoichi in our class? Unable to take it any longer, Sasuke slammed his hands on the desk, pointing at Naruto. Iruka merely looked at the boy like a parent would look at a spoiled child. Why? These are the groups that Hokage-sama put together personally. That loser, as you call him, had the best scores in the class in just about everything, and has been named Rookie of the Year. The team was made to balance his and the girls' strengths and weaknesses, just like yours was. Sit down and stop complaining. Iruka continued once again after he was satisfied that Sasuke understood that he wouldn't be getting his way over the Hokage's decision. Team 9 is Shino Aburame, Kiba Inuzuka, and Choji Akamichi. Junin sensei will be Kurenai Yuhi. The stoic, quiet boy who always wore dark sunglasses nodded his assent, the same as both Choji and Kiba. They didn't have a problem with Shino, other than him being mildly antisocial. Your sensei should be arriving soon. They'll meet with you, perhaps take your team for lunch, and try to get to know you better. All teams are final, and the council has no say in the matter. Once again, Iruka shot a glance to a brooding Sasuke. It wasn't much later that Kurenai and Asuma entered the room. Each of those teams, save Shino, patted Shikamaru's back, Naruto signaling to meet at his home after the day's events. Asuma decided to treat his new team to barbecue, partly because it was the only restaurant he liked that let him smoke indoors. Once they had sat down and set some meat to cook, Asuma looked around. I can already tell you 3 get along quite well. I've been away from Konoha for a while though, so I should do things by the books. I'm Asuma Sarutobi, son of the 3rd Hokage. I like training, go, and shogi. I hate running out of cigs and trying to quit. In the future, I plan on settling down with a beautiful woman and having brats of my own. When he had finished, he pointed his chopsticks at Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki, son of. Here he coughed, making the other 3 raise an eyebrow in confusion. I like my friends, ramen, training, working at the Kireru forge, and gardening. I hate people who think they should be given everything with no work, those intolerant to people who could not choose their circumstances, keeping certain secrets from my friends, and the 3 minutes it takes for instant ramen. One day, I will be the greatest ninja ever, and unite the great nations to put an end to senseless war. Hey, you grew up well, kid. Somehow you managed to pull yourself out of the depression you were in the last time I saw you. He motioned towards Hinata next before lifting a strip of meat to his mouth. Hinata Hyuga, daughter of Hiyashi Hyuga. I like my friends, pressing flowers, and training in Jukin with my father, sister, and cousin. I hate the secrets Naruto keeps from us. She shot a playful glare at the blonde who was eating slowly, and my clan's use of the caged bird seal. One day I will become head of the clan and abolish the branch mentality that my clan has held onto for so long. Good strong goals for the future. With an attitude like hers, she'll definitely make it. Mouth full, he merely grunted before nodding towards Ino for her introduction. Off to the side, Naruto had begun tossing strips of meat into the air with his chopsticks and catching them in his mouth, causing Hinata to giggle at his antics. Ino Yamanaka, daughter of Inoichi Yamanaka. I like my friends, reading, flowers, fashion, and practicing the Yamanaka mind jutsu. I also hate the secrets that Naruto keeps from us, and people who disrespect nature. Someday, I want to start a flower shop of my own and have a nice family. The blonde girl finally began to dig into the cooked food, snatching one of the strips Naruto had flung into the air before he caught it. Ah, a girl after my own tastes. Well now, this is a pretty well-rounded group. Ino is gonna have to learn a thing or two about close combat, and even though Hinata's a Hyuga, I'm gonna teach her a healthy amount of jutsu. Maybe even find a weapon that she could use in conjunction with Jukin. Naruto. Well, not too sure what to do with him. The way Pops puts it, he's basically trained himself. Ah, maybe we could work on affinity chakra early with him. Hey, Naruto, you work with old Shinrei, right? Mouth full, the boy only nodded, tapping the hilt of Tsukihitsume beside him in a way that clearly said, I made this myself while working there. Before swallowing. What about it, sensei? Thinking about a weapon for these two. Hand-to-hand combat's all well and good, but when your opponent's got a weapon, it'd be a good idea to have one yourself. For Hinata, something that could work nicely in conjunction with Jukin. Maybe even extend its range. For Ino, something a little longer in range. What do you think? Naruto chewed thoughtfully, sizing his teammates up. Give me the night, and I can make it. I know exactly what would suit them best. Both girls blushed at the thought of getting to own something that Naruto would create. They had seen how beautiful his blade was, and knew they would be in for a treat. Good. Also, think you could sharpen these up for me before tomorrow? Asuma reached into one of his pouches, producing a pair of identical trench knives which Naruto picked up and examined carefully. Chakra steel. Perfect balance for fighting or throwing. These were made by. Hey. Turning them, he saw the faded stamp of the Kireru forge. Yeah, shouldn't be too much trouble at all. Satisfied, Asuma sat back and lit a cigarette, taking a small drag. Well, I can already tell that you three know the value of teamwork and the ins and outs of each other's abilities, so we don't need a test to fully pass you. The three grinned, having expected something like that to be the case. But we'll still run the test tomorrow anyway, so that I can see how far along you are. Meet up at Training Grounds 9 at 0700 hours sharp. We'll be running a mock mission together, but you'll only get the details in the morning. That said, the man stood up and left the restaurant. Naruto stood soon after, waving to his teammates. Well, I'm gonna stop by Shinrei-sensei's place and get everything ready for tomorrow. Go ahead and rest up at my place. Shika, Choji, and Kiba should be there soon enough. After walking through the business district to gather materials for his new projects, the boy entered the forge through the back way to see Shinrei hammering out a new set of kunai. Yo boss, gonna make a couple of custom orders. Also, got these to sharpen up, recognize them? The two were used to tossing sharp implements back and forth to each other, so the larger man caught the knives effortlessly. Well damn, these have had some wear. Of course I remember these. It was an odd, custom order from the Hokage for his son when he graduated from the academy. Well, get teeth work boy. It's good tea, have you back in the shop. I worked all through the night on those weapons. For Hinata, I had decided on a set of tonfa in a material that conducted chakra with ease. There are slips of paper made of trees that have been grown strictly with chakra. These are the slips of paper that are used to test the C-Kara affinity of ninja. I used this light-toned wood as the base of the tonfa, inlaying one with a long golden dragon, and the other with one of silver. To these I added small fragments of polished bone for embellishment. Ino's weapon was something else entirely. There is a method of making platinum stronger and sharper than almost any other metal. I used this method to craft a long spear. The head of the spear was a wide, arrow-like blade, with a raised design that looked as if it was held in the mouth of an engraved dragon that coiled down the entire length of the shaft, ending in a short, sharp spike. I managed to give the platinum of the spearhead a red tint that would not fade, and where the dragon was not engraved on the shaft, I set in dark polished slats of wood. In both weapons, I engraved the words, "May the will of fire burn eternal." These I wrapped in green velvet and carried home. Once the boy got to his place, he found all of his friends sleeping soundly on futons that they had brought. He grinned to himself before creeping upstairs silently to avoid waking them. He set the newly forged weapons against the wall along with his Tsukihitsume. Not bothering to undress, he climbed on top of his mattress and fell asleep within seconds, thankful for the warm summer night. Morning came swiftly, but Naruto's friends didn't bother to wake him until they had finished preparing breakfast. Ino and Hinata went upstairs to get him up, throwing curious glances towards the two bundles beside his blade. Once they had finally shaken the boy awake and dragged him downstairs to eat, they asked their question. "Say, Naruto, those bundles up there in your room, those are what you spent all night making, aren't they?" The boy merely grinned and nodded, mentally thanking Yuko for her healing abilities. Through careful study of the boy's body, she could now even heal his mental fatigue, allowing him to get a full night's sleep out of only a few hours if need be. "Yup, that would be it. You'll get to see them when we start the mission today. Speaking of, do any of you know what your mission is?" Everybody shook their heads at the same time. "Well, Kurenai-sensei took us out for lunch, and we all introduced ourselves. Shino's actually a pretty interesting guy if you can ever get him to open up." Kiba scratched the back of his head, his dog Akamaru barking in agreement. Choji only nodded as he continued eating. "Sounds like it went well for you guys. Our sensei is troublesome. He shows up 2 hours late, tells us that his first impression is that he hates us, and to get to the top of the roof for introductions. Once we get there, we learn virtually nothing except his name. Uchiha starts spouting his typical clan restoration, kill the traitor act. Haruno only acts like a fangirl. Then, we're told to meet up at 0900 hours for our test, and told not to eat in the morning. The lazy boy grumbled to himself as he took another bite of his breakfast. "It's too troublesome to go hungry though. I don't care if this test makes me puke." There was a communal shrug before Naruto finished his food and went upstairs to gather his supplies for the day and to secure his blade to his hip. He paused momentarily to look at his bandaged arm thoughtfully. "Maybe I'll tell them soon. Gonna be late if we don't hurry it up." He slung the two bundles over his shoulder and rushed out the door, leaving a hurried goodbye to Choji, Shikamaru, and Kiba. The three managed to get to Training Ground 9 in record time, arriving several minutes before they were expected. Turning to Hinata, Naruto unwrapped the tonfa, holding them out to her. "These are yours now, Hinata-chan. Their names are Tengokuryu and Jigokuryu. Heaven Dragon and Hell Dragon. Cheesy, I know, two pillars that support the world." Hinata took the tonfa, marveling at the craftsmanship, and at how strangely right they felt in her hands. Of course, she hadn't ever practiced with anything like them, so for now, she tucked them away in her belt. Next, Naruto unwrapped the longer bundle before handing the long spear to Ino. "This is Kokorotoge, and Mind Thorn. From what you've told me about higher-level Yamanaka jutsu, you can use them in conjunction with a bladed weapon like this. I hope you enjoy it." Ino was left just as speechless as Hinata was. She hadn't expected Naruto would be able to create something like this, much less both weapons, in the span of one night. Also, like Hinata, she had no weapons training other than basic academy weapons, so she found a way to strap the spear to her back. Asuma showed up soon after, whistling at the craftsmanship of the new weapons. "Well now, you did this in just one night? I'm impressed. What about my knives, were you able to get to them?" His answer was a smaller velvet bundle tossed by Naruto. Inside were his blades, keener than he could remember them ever being, and with the Kireru Forge emblem re-stamped into the metal. "Nice. Now, on to our mission of the day. There is a team that has been out of the academy for a year now. They go by the name of Team Guy. Their sensei and his protege have figured out how to cast some kind of genjutsu that makes you see a sunset and crashing waves. I know it doesn't sound all that bad, but trust me, it is. We are going to go confront them and try to learn how to dispel this jutsu, for the sake of all Konoha ninja. There was a single noise of confirmation from the three genin, and all traces of them vanished from the small clearing they had been standing in seconds before. With practiced ease, they flew through the branches of the trees surrounding most of the training grounds, following their sensei until they reached a new clearing. In the center of it were two people clad in tight green spandex with neon orange leg warmers, matching bowl cuts, and even eyebrows. These two were trading blows frantically while shouting something about youth. Off to the side was a long, raven-haired Hyuga practicing Jukin by himself, and a short ways away was somebody that Naruto easily recognized as Tenten, throwing various sharp implements into a set of already beaten and shredded training dummies. Asuma signaled for Naruto to take the younger boy in the center while he tackled the older one. Hinata and Ino got orders to keep the other two busy should they attempt to interfere. After 3 quiet nods of confirmation, Naruto and Asuma both sprung into action, interrupting an attack from their respective targets while Hinata and Ino crouched, ready to leap into the fray should it be necessary. Lee looked in confusion at the other boy who had blocked a kick directed at his sensei with a single bandaged arm before recognition set in. "You are Naruto, the rookie of the year in your class, are you not? Why are you here?" As he spoke, he twisted his body around to land firmly on the ground. "Nothing personal." Bushy brows. "It's our genin test. I need you to tell me how to dispel that crazy genjutsu you and your sensei have come up with." Naruto pushed the hilt of Tsukihitsume around behind his back and assumed his unarmed Kido no Yasei stance, fingers splayed to act as claws while crouching low to the ground. "No weapons, straight up taijutsu fight. That's how you do it, nay." Bushy brows. Lee grinned, assuming his own taijutsu stance. "So the rumors about you were correct, Naruto. You do have honor in a fight. I was hoping that I would be able to challenge you soon, and then you bring the fight to me instead." Without a signal, the two boys charged each other, knowing that neither could goad the other to attack first. Lee threw a strong right cross, the speed of which took Naruto by surprise. Unable to dodge, the blonde channeled a small amount of chakra into his hands, grasping at the ground beneath him as the punch connected with his shoulder. With that maneuver, he was able to stay in place as well as judge the strength and speed of Lee's attacks. He also realized that his current style wasn't suitable for such a fight. The blonde switched gears quickly, using residual momentum from the blow to roll to his feet, immediately switching to his Kuzenagare stance. Lee followed through with his attack, using his current downward motion to flip around, turning a fall into a heel drop which Naruto dodged around. The next set of attacks set the trend for the rest of the match. Lee followed his heel drop with a spinning kick which Naruto caught against his side. The blonde held Lee's foot as he followed the attack through, pulling the other boy off of his center of balance. Still holding Lee's leg, Naruto rolled to the side, twisting his opponent upside down. However, Lee caught himself before he hit the ground and used his superior leg strength to throw the blonde up into the air. Both seemed to be at a standstill as the match continued, neither being able to get an upper hand on their opponent. Asuma and Guy seemed to be locked in a similar situation, Guy having drawn his nunchaku while Asuma had his blades attached to his fists. They seemed to banter like friends in the midst of their fierce battle, laughing and talking about team strategies. It was around this time that Neji and Tenten finally came to their senses, and rushed to help their teammates, only to be cut off in mid-stride by Ino and Hinata. "Ah, Hinata-sama, this is your genin squad mission then? I take it your sensei wants to find out how to break those maniacs' horrid genjutsu. As a team, it's our duty to help out, kindly step aside." Neji dropped into his Jukin stance, while Hinata did the same. "Sorry Neji-Nisan, I can't just let you go through. Our orders are to intercept you should you try to join." Tenten noticed the weapons that the girls had with them and peered more closely at the blonde who was in the middle of yet another grapple battle with Lee. "Ah, I shoulda known it was Naruto's team. Only he and my dad know how to make weapons as beautiful and deadly as those look. I'm jealous. Blondie-chan, do you think I could look at that spear of yours?" The weapons mistress had a lustful glint in her eye. Ino gripped the shaft of her weapon protectively as she stepped into what she hoped would be a good stance. It felt right to her anyway. I'll have to say no, sorry. I just got it, you see, and I don't like losing pretty things. It makes me angry. Tenten stuck her tongue out playfully at that. I just wanted to inspect it. Only thing Naru-kun's made for me is these. The girl reached behind her back to produce two exquisitely designed silver knives, holding them in a reverse grip. He seems to have a habit of crafting weapons with expensive materials for whatever reason. A tag team fight began between those four, those on either side watching the other's back. Ino and Hinata together managed to hold Neji and Tenten in mostly one place. The more experienced duo was slowly gaining ground though. Back in the center of the clearing, the two boys stood panting slightly. Once again, Naruto and Lee faced each other, waiting and watching for even a momentary drop in the other's guard. You're good, Lee. I haven't had this much fun sparring since I first started. I could always manage to get my opponent to lose their head and rush right in. Not you though. Lee gave a quick thumbs up, flashing a grin at his blonde opponent. I'm impressed, Naruto. You've surprised me. I had just suspected that you were one of those who earned Rookie of the Year through clan ability or ill-gotten power. Now that I have faced you, I can tell that you have worked just as hard, if not harder, than I let us be eternal rivals on the battlefield of youth. Naruto grinned back, nodding his assent. I don't know about youth, but where hand-to-hand combat is key, you and I will most definitely be the strongest of rivals. As if in a sudden agreement, both dropped out of their stances and shook hands firmly. They had both overheard Asuma and Guide talking to each other during their fight, and from that Naruto had learned the name of his opponent, and Lee had guessed the reason for the interruption of his training. As a show of good faith, Naruto, I will teach you how to break through our genjutsu. I cannot use jutsu, but that does not mean that I have no chakra. Guy-sensei has figured out how to draw out and use my chakra himself. It is a common mistake that people think Guy-sensei is the only person involved. The key to breaking the jutsu is in cutting the chakra flow between us. I will leave figuring that out to you though. Naruto flashed a grin before blowing a sharp whistle, a signal to his teammates that he had accomplished their goal. The other three immediately pulled out of their respective bouts and vanished into the surrounding trees once more, leaving Neji and Tenten confused. The brown-haired girl looked to her equally befuddled teammate. Neji, do you have any clue what all that was about? Neji shook his head as he watched Lee talk with Guy in his usual energetic manner before the two crushed each other in a man-hug, tears flowing freely from their eyes as their jutsu activated. No, not even a clue. I guess we'll be seeing a lot more of that team though. Whatever they were sent to do, they did it. Team 8 panted lightly as they stood in the center of the training grounds they had met up at a few hours prior. Asuma let his students catch their breaths as he waited for the report patiently. Truth be told, he was feeling winded as well, but pride wouldn't allow him to show it. Naruto took a deep breath, steadying himself before launching into his account. Taking this as a regular mission, he snapped into debriefing mode. Sir, mission accomplished. After an intense sparring session with Lee Rock, protege of Guy Might, the answer to breaking the Sunset Genjutsu was revealed by Lee himself. Guy uses Lee's dormant chakra to cast the jutsu. Suggestions on method would be to knock both out, or cut the flow of chakra between them somehow. Asuma lit a cigarette, taking a deep drag before blowing the smoke out in a ring. Guy's figured out how to do something like that, huh? I always knew the guy was smarter than he let on. Hinata, you and Ino did well today against those two. You held them back long enough for Naruto to get our answer. Well done all three of you. Let's call it a day though. I'm beat from going toe-to-toe with that maniac. We will begin training right here at 0900 hours tomorrow. His three students nodded in agreement before breaking off, each headed towards their houses to get some well-earned rest. As Naruto walked through the woods towards his place, he delved into his mindscape to find Yuko kneeling in the center of the meadow as usual. The fox spirit smiled and bade him to sit with her. Good work today, Naruto. You held your own against a more experienced opponent quite well. Naruto chuckled, keeping part of his mind outside of his body to safely guide him home. Couldn't you tell though? Lee was holding back quite a bit. He had incredibly heavy weights under those leg warmers, so he wasn't even moving at top speed. I'm going to need to work a lot harder if I'm supposed to live up to being his rival. Ino opened the door to her home, greeted by an ecstatic Reina and Inoichi. Hey, there's our princess. We hadn't seen you in a couple of days. Fill us in on everything. Who's in your team? Where did you get that spear? Inoichi added the last question, noticing it shortly after Ino had propped it against the wall. Well, it's not the Ino Shika Cho trio that you thought it would be. It turns out, Naruto had the best grades in class, so he was paired with Hinata and I. We all finally figured out where he lived though. We were there so late waiting for him to finish up at the forge last night that all of us just kinda spent the night. Our team passed the second exam before we even took it, but Asuma-sensei had us run the test anyway. During that, we figured out how to beat some strange jutsu these two weird guys made together. As for Kokorodige here, that's what Naruto was doing at the forge all night. He made weapons for Hinata and I. Ino kicked off her shoes and sat down on their couch, breathing a sigh of relief. You were what? He did what? What? Sure, Inoichi had been following the escapades of the younger blonde with interest, but too much had been said that was a shock to his system. No Ino Shika Cho trio he could handle. Finding Naruto's place was an accomplishment, as only the Hokage had known where the boy lived. His daughter staying at a boy's house crossed a line he hadn't wanted to even see for years. He reasoned that they had found a way to break the thrice-damned sunset genjutsu, and that was another shock. The last was how the boy had managed to create such a deadly work of art in a single night. Then it hit him: shadow clones. Reina helped her husband sit down as he struggled to come to grips with a few choice bits of information before going into the kitchen to make some tea. Inoichi would need it to calm his nerves, and Ino would appreciate something to help her relax. Hinata was sitting down to dinner with Hiyashi, her sister Hanabi, and Neji, each having already given their account of the day. It seems like you've been well placed, my daughter. However, I have to ask about those tonfa of yours. I have a feeling that they are more than they seem. Hinata nodded, setting her chopsticks down before removing the light yet sturdy wooden tonfa from her belt, handing them to her father. Naruto made them himself at Asuma-sensei's idea that Jukin's range could be extended and the effects translated over a wider area. I have yet to try though. Hiyashi was one of the few who believed that the Jukin was stagnating with the restrictions on creating variations of the style. Even so, he had to see it for himself before he would allow it. These were made just to your arms, Hinata, so you should test them out instead of me. After dinner, we will go to the dojo. Hiyashi was surprised at what I had done with those simple weapons. I guess the thought had never occurred to the Hyuga to use chakra wood in weapons, because once Hinata channeled chakra into her hands, the tonfa had the same effect as Jukin on the body. Able to disrupt the chakra system as well as cause regular bodily harm. The head of the clan immediately gave his approval for her to develop a Jukin tonfa style, saying that he would force the Hyuga Council to accept it and that she would open the way for new progress by doing so. For months on end we trained under Asuma-sensei, Hinata and Ino quickly acclimating to their weapons. Soon enough we were asked to have a rematch with Team Guy under the pretense that they wanted to see how far along our skills had progressed. Lee still didn't remove his leg weights to fight me, and this time I barely managed to pull off a win. Ino and Tenten fought to a draw, and Hinata, with her increased range, power, and flexibility of style, tied with Neji. Asuma and Guy were pleased with the outcome, knowing it would push both of our teams on to new heights. During our training, we also ran several D-ranked missions. They were boring, but training is training. It wasn't until our 4th month of training that we received our first high-level mission. The 4 of us stood at attention in front of our Hokage, awaiting our next mission. Team 8, I am pleased with your progress. This is why I will be giving you a mission to bolster Team 7's ranks. There was a situation on their first C rank. Instead of a simple escort mission to the Land of Wave, missing ninja have become a factor. They have refused to give up on the mission, but Kakashi and Shikamaru have sent a request for backup. I'm not sure if the other 2 on that team know the request, but once you arrive, you will be taking the lead. Team 7 is currently holding position 10 kilometers east of the gates. Meet up with them ASAP and finish the mission. The old man grinned to himself. As soon as he had given them their mission, they had broken ranks to prepare. He was confident that he had placed the mission in good hands. Shortly after receiving the mission, Team 8 met up at the gates of Konoha, each carrying a single scroll at their hip. Right, this is our first serious mission. With the inclusion of missing ninja, it's been bumped up to an A rank. Let's get this done and done right. Asuma grinned at the end of his short pep talk. His students had come a long way from when they first met. When they needed to, they all acted like a team, but under it all, they had become the best of friends. Move out. Naruto took point, running at a dead sprint with the rest of his team following close behind. Within a few hours of travel, they caught up with Team 7, the three genin waving to their friend. "Oi, couldn't handle this kinda thing yourself, Hashika?" Ino giggled as she gave her friend a hug. Sasuke and Sakura glared at the blonde boy who pointedly ignored them, opting to introduce himself to the client. He extended his hand to the older man. "Naruto Uzumaki of Team 8. As of now, we'll be taking charge of this mission. These are my teammates, Ino Yamanaka and Hinata Hyuga, and our Junin sensei, Asuma Srutobi." The old man took Naruto's hand, grinning. Glad to see they finally sent some real ninja out to help. The other team's sensei and that Shikamaru are good, but then we have an overconfident little snot, and his rabid fangirl. Name's Tazuna, by the way. Well then Tazuna, let's get you home. Kakashi, have your team guard the rear. Naruto, you and I will take point. Hinata, Ino, you take the flanks. Asuma's orders were quick and clear, but before Naruto took his position, he handed Shikamaru a small bag. "Here's a set of those mini chakram. Always meant to get them to you, but it seems like you've been pretty busy." The lazy boy grinned at his blonde friend, taking the bag and stashing it out of sight. "Yeah, Uchiha's a troublesome handful like we thought he would be, and Haruno's just about useless. I have a feeling there's a reason why Kakashi got Sasuke though." The brooding boy in question watched their exchange, only hearing the part about the chakram. "Oi, Dobi, why not spread them around? Don't just cater to your friends." Naruto gave him an incredulous look. "What, and let you cut your hand open the first time you try to use them? It's either that or lose them outright, and these things are hard to make. I've already taught Shikamaru how to use them properly. Maybe if you get your head out of your ass, he'll teach you." Turning back to his friend, he held another whispered conversation. "So, you figure out what kinda weapon you like best? If it's something I can make, I'll see to it if there's a forge handy at Wave." The dark-haired boy nodded. "Yeah, I've gotten pretty handy with a Nodashi. If you could pull it off, that would be good." Naruto grinned. "Ah, that does fit you pretty well. Hell of a lot easier than Kiba's request. He wants me to make a set of wrist claws." They broke away and went to their positions. Since Tazuna was an older man and had no ninja training, they had to move at a fraction of their normal speed, though they still made good progress. It was only in the midst of a patch of woods that they encountered anything at all. It was Naruto that heard the first sounds, a soft rustling behind tall ferns. Acting purely on instinct, he lobbed a kunai in that direction, giving pause to everybody, and startling Tazuna and especially Sakura. "Naruto baka, don't go scaring us like that." The blonde shot her a piercing glare, lifting a finger to his lips as he crept towards where he had thrown his knife. What he found was a pure white rabbit, startled to the point that it stood perfectly still. "Odd, I know a thing or three about the wildlife around this area. Normally these rabbits have their dark summer coat by now. This one was raised indoors. Kawarimi? Everybody, be on guard, we've got company somewhere. Hey, perceptive brat, but you're just a little genin, don't get ahead of yourself." The voice echoed from all around them. "Are you all ready to die? Here we go." Naruto picked up a faint whooshing sound and hit the dirt. "Everybody get down. Now." Asuma knew to trust Naruto's judgment in cases like this and went down along with Ino and Hinata. Kakashi pulled Tazuna to the ground, and Shikamaru grabbed both Sasuke and Sakura down with him. Not even seconds later, a large blade flew through the air where their necks had been before embedding itself in the trunk of a tree. When they looked up to see what had happened, they saw a tall, well-muscled man wearing black and white camouflage. The lower half of his face was wrapped in bandages, and he wore the headband of Kurgakure at an angle across his forehead, a long scratch running through the village emblem. This man was standing on top of the blade that had just been thrown. Kakashi recognized the man in an instant. "This is not good. I was hoping we wouldn't meet somebody like him. He's in Konoha's bingo book, listed as Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the mist." Naruto cracked a grin, making several hand signs from the ground that his friends interpreted as 4-on-1. Even if this guy's a missing ninja, he's got no chance. Especially if the others join in. To this, they showed a single hand signal. One that usually meant, "after you." The blonde stood, Ino and Hinata following suit, and each drew their weapons. Demon of the Mist, huh? I think you chose a poor fight. Don't underestimate us simply because we're genin. Even if one of us can't match your skill, you are still outnumbered. Kakashi threw a confused glance at a grinning Asuma who merely nodded towards Tazuna. The kid's got a plan. I say we let them try it out. We'll take care of the client. If things get out of hand, we can step in. While they got into position, Zabuza dropped onto the ground, wrenching his tremendous blade from the tree. At a silent signal from Naruto, Hinata and Ino vanished into the surrounding thicket, leaving the boy and the older man in a staring contest. That's a nice blade you've got there, brat. Once I kill you, I'll have to take it for myself. You can try, but you'll never lay a hand on her. Tsukihitsume is picky about who holds her. He slid into his Kazenagare stance, blade tip pointed directly at Zabuza's heart. However, she rarely cares who she bites, so be careful. Interesting stance, brat. I don't think I've seen that one before. It won't matter though. With practiced ease, the larger man hefted his blade as if it only weighed as much as a regular katana, and delivered what would have been a crushing downward blow to the boy had he not shifted his body at just the right time, using the flat of his own sword to deflect the blade before translating the momentum through as a kick to Zabuza's stomach. Zabuza jumped back to avoid the blonde's foot, and began to appraise the boy more carefully. So, you play it that way? Interesting, you're far better than I thought. Still, it's not good enough. Unseen to him, Naruto grinned behind his crimson scarf. He had drawn the attention. It was almost time to set the plan in motion. Let's try this one then, see if you can keep up. Flipping his blade into a reverse grip, Naruto crouched low to the ground, free hand splayed-like and blade held parallel behind his back. He jumped forward towards Zabuza who merely held his blade in front of himself to guard. The blonde switched tactics in an instant as he grabbed the spine of the massive blade in mid-air and flipped over, bringing his heel down on the back of Zabuza's skull. Once he landed, he attempted to follow through by spinning back around, blade back in a standard grip for a strong thrust. Once again, Zabuza's reflexes were good enough for him to dodge out of the way of the thrust, jumping and rolling off to the side. Naruto gave a sharp whistle, and all of a sudden it seemed like a platinum spear grew out of the ground right next to Zabuza's feet. Ino followed close behind, wrenching the heavy head out of the ground before deftly swinging the crimson blade towards the man who had managed to dodge yet again. Naruto came over the top of Ino, using the shaft of her spear as a springboard to leap high into the air. Another sharp whistle echoed through the clearing, and Hinata jumped into the fray, mimicking Naruto's movements perfectly to line up directly behind him as a shadow. Zabuza had been too distracted by the boy's aerial antics, and had gotten an eyeful of the sun. As a result, he missed the Hinata's ascent completely. When the boy came down, he had been surprised. Having expected another calculated attack, he was met with a grapple instead. Naruto had taken hold of Zabuza's shoulder and swung behind him. Using both arms and his blade, he managed to get the man in a double arm lock. It didn't matter that he could be thrown away easily, all he needed to do was hold on for a few seconds. Hinata flipped her tonfa around to extend their range and they flared with her chakra. She performed a single flip as she fell to gather force, and at the end of her rotation brought her weapons crashing down on either side of Zabuza's neck where she knew two main tenketsu to be, shutting them off. Kakashi watched in awe. Here it was. This was the teamwork he had been trying in vain to teach his team. Each of them on their own would be little match for such a strong opponent, yet together they had dealt a crushing blow. They trusted each other without question, almost instinctively playing out their part exactly when necessary. Sasuke, Sakura, watch this carefully. This is how a team is supposed to work together. He said nothing to Shikamaru. The lazy Nara had been preaching to his other teammates about this particular subject since the teams were formed. Back at the fight, the odds had been evened. By limiting the chakra flow to the rest of Zabuza's arms, they had cut a fair amount of strength and speed from his attacks. However they tried though, the more experienced ninja managed to avoid any further attacks, wearing their endurance down until Hinata and Ino had to withdraw at the risk of being a liability. Naruto panted softly. Even with Yuko bolstering his stamina, he couldn't draw this fight out much longer. To his chagrin, Zabuza soon managed to free his tenketsu, making yet another attempt to cleave the boy in two. Unable to stay back any longer, Kakashi and Asuma stepped in to Naruto's defense, blocking the massive sword together. Naruto, you did well. Fall back for now and leave this to Kakashi and I. Asuma and Kakashi have a heave and pushed the blade back while Naruto went to join the rest of the genin. Sorry you didn't get to play your part, Shika. Couldn't get the bastard in the right place as hard as I tried. The blonde panted, leaning against his lazy friend. Don't worry about it. It's far less troublesome to have our sensei take care of it. The guy is a missing a rank ninja after all. Sasuke was torn between watching his Kakashi as he revealed his Sharingan eye and glaring at Naruto, still at a complete loss as to how the blonde was so much stronger than himself. While he was lost in his thoughts, he hadn't noticed a thick mist that had crept in until Naruto called out. Protect Tazuna, this is an assassin's technique. The 6 genin stood around the old man, weapons drawn and ready for any sign of attack. Heart, lungs, spine, larynx, brain, jugular. All of these places guarantee an instant death. Which should I hit? The voice seemed to come from all around, all at once. It was Ino that saw it first. Lashing out with her spear, she made contact with Zabuza's stomach, leaving a wide gash before he simply turned into a puddle of water on the ground. Mizu Bunshin. Careful guys, there might be more of them. With a flourish, the blonde girl brought her spear back to a ready position, eyes watching the mist for anything that moved. Another came soon after, this one attempting to go through Sakura. The girl could only stare in fright at what she thought would be her certain death until Kakashi came out of nowhere to save her. After dispatching the clone, he turned to her, smiling through his mask. Don't worry Sakura, I'm not going to let him lay a hand on any of you. I will protect you with my life, because that's what a team is all about. A sudden flare of chakra from the silver-haired Junin broke through the mist. A 2-bit trick like that won't get the best of me Zabuza. The fight between them was impressive to see. Kakashi and Zabuza went toe-to-toe, giving no quarter to each other. Kakashi utilized his Sharingan to evaluate and copy nearly every move Zabuza made. Somehow though, Kakashi was caught in a trap. He was pulled under the water of the lake that the two had taken their fight to by another clone of Zabuza. There, he was trapped in a binding jutsu of Zabuza's called the water prison. Asuma had held back, not one to normally team up against an opponent so close to his level, but when Kakashi was trapped, he turned to Naruto with a small smirk. This is what I was going to teach you soon, Naruto. For now, just watch and see if you understand. He held his trench knives point up and began to channel wind chakra through the blades. As he did, several inches of pure white wind formed, extending the length of his knives. Zabuza wasn't quite as ready for the other man as he had thought. He didn't take into account both Asuma's affinity mastery and his speed. In seconds, Asuma had cut Zabuza's clones down before rushing the other man who was forced to free Kakashi in order to save himself. From that point on, the two worked in tandem. Kakashi followed Zabuza's every move as before, but Asuma cut in, constantly forcing Zabuza to keep moving. Naruto watched the battle with glazed eyes though. Seeing Asuma utilize his chakra nature had sparked something in the boy's mind that Jin had been waiting for. Naruto, it's time for you to grasp my power. I will guide your body this first time. The blonde snapped back to attention as the bandages hiding the gauntlet burst apart, Jin's gem shining brightly. Tsukihitsume, still in his grasp, flared to life at his unbound touch, and as Jin's power flowed into the blade, it too acquired a turquoise brilliance. Unknown to him, but seen by everybody else, 2 pure white marks placed themselves above each brow, curving downwards to meet at the corners of his eyes. Kakashi and Asuma felt the waves of power flowing from the young blonde, and turned to look mid-fight despite themselves. As they turned, Naruto charged towards them, eyes locked on Zabuza. When he passed them at such a great speed, they were sure they saw a single ethereal wing sprouting from his left shoulder. It was gone once they blinked. All present stared in wonder as Naruto attacked Zabuza relentlessly. Anytime the older man tried to strike, Naruto would either dodge and counter or use the blow against him. Something seemed off about him though. Almost as if it wasn't even Naruto who was fighting. The battle ended abruptly though. Once the blonde had his opponent pinned against a tree, 3 senbon flew from the top of another tree, striking Zabuza's neck. When Naruto tried to find where they had came from, he saw a figure with black hair, dressed in the cloths of Kiri, and whose face was covered by a porcelain mask like that of Konoha Anbu. The figure spoke to them, jumping from its perch to examine Zabuza. "Well now, I guess I have to thank you, little one. You made my job a lot easier by wearing him down like that. I'll be taking my leave now, to dispose of the body." Before any of them could stop him, the hunter ninja of Kiri formed a set of one-handed seals, Zabuza's arms slung over his shoulder, and vanished. Fret gone, Naruto returned to normal. Tsukihitsume lost her turquoise fire, resuming her usual white glow. "He's not dead, you know. That person just hit him in the right place to put him in a death-like state." "Damn." He sheathed his blade and turned to his teammates, Silver Gauntlet in plain sight. "Well, guess I'm gonna have to explain this, huh? Just let me rest a bit." His eyes drifted closed, and he slumped down to the ground. Hinata, Ino, and Shikamaru were by his side in a flash, Hinata using her Byakugan to try to find the problem. "I didn't think it could happen to Naruto, but he's suffering from chakra exhaustion." The pale-eyed girl turned her gaze to Asuma. "Sensei, he'll have to be carried in. I don't think he will wake up until later tonight." Asuma nodded, lighting a cigarette. "I'll take him. So long as we don't have anybody between us as strong as Zabuza, we should get there safely." Sasuke could have sang at that point. Not only had Naruto blown himself out completely, but he now thought he knew what had given him all that power. "Now I just need to take it away from him. Once we get back, I'll just go to the council and they'll make him give it to me along with that sword of his." Kakashi noticed the hungry look in his student's eye and shook his head, saying nothing. Surely the boy would learn someday, right? Just like Asuma had predicted, they made it to Tazuna's village without any further incident. They had put Naruto in one of the guest rooms in the house to let him rest. Downstairs, both Kakashi and Asuma were wading through a sea of questions. "Look, yes, we already knew about Naruto's arm. I was there the day it happened to him. It's not a curse or a bloodline, but that's all I can say. He will have to talk about it when he's ready." Asuma cut off any more questions and looked to Hinata and Ino. "You two will be helping the others train for a while. It seems like Kakashi hasn't had the chance to even show them tree-walking chakra exercises yet. Something about a lack of teamwork has been holding them back." Everybody in the room shot a look at both Sasuke and Sakura, who seemed to be oblivious to the conversation. "Hey, I'll say. Lazy ass there is the only one in that team who seems to get it." The eyes of everybody in the room, Tazuna, his daughter Tsunami, and her son Inari included, snapped to the top of the stairs where Naruto was steadying himself. "Naruto, are you sure you're alright walking around?" Kakashi asked as he watched the boy who shouldn't even be awake yet make his way down the stairs. "TCH, it's gonna take more than a bit of exhaustion to keep me down. I just need something good to eat, and I can start light training until I get my reserves back up." He sat down at the table with everybody else, and a bowl of rice was set in front of him by Tsunami. "Thank you, miss." He ate calmly, looking at the arm he decided to keep unbound, and thought. Inari, already on a short fuse, snapped. How can you just pretend you aren't tired at all? How can you pretend you aren't hurt at all? You make me sick. You can just keep going on, happy as ever, can't you? You don't know anything about suffering, do you?" Kakashi and Asuma looked towards Naruto, wondering how he would take such a comment. The boy in question merely set his chopsticks down and turned his gaze towards Inari. "Don't know suffering? Of course I do. Almost everybody in this world has suffered. I don't know your past, but let me tell you a story. One that has been etched deep into my heart. It's the legend of how the world itself came to be. Most people only know the vague details, but I know the whole story from the eyes of the boy in the center of everything. You could say that this is also where my story begins." Nobody in the room expected a reaction like this. Nonetheless, they quieted, eager to listen to the full version of a tale they had all been told in fragments as children. Sasuke listening intently for any clue that would tip him off to gaining such a power. Once, long ago, when the world was a different shape, there was an island in the center of the world that people called Illusia. All the peoples of the world thought of Illusia as a holy place because of an ancient tree that had stood there since time immemorial. The great tree had been cursed, and had slowly turned to stone. The tree was protected by the guardian beast, a white feathered dragon, and the treefolk who lived at its base. One day, while walking the beach, a woman of the treefolk found a baby adrift at sea. She took the baby in, named him Keldrick, and raised him to be a warrior of the treefolk. This is Keldrick's story, one about love and loss. About a maiden who became a goddess, a sacred sword, and the spirits of nature. Buju, Buju, come here. Keldi, could you get Buju for me? He's run off again. A beautiful maiden with long brown hair, and a dress styled after flowers asked her dear friend. Sure Ritzia, no problem. Be back in a flash. The blonde boy dressed in the traditional garb of treefolk warriors dashed off towards the woods where Ritzia's pet had run off to, grabbing a long, sturdy branch from the ground to use as a sword. Don't hurt him though, came another request from Ritzia. In that day and age, there were a great many creatures that no longer walk this world, or have evolved to cope with the changes that have happened. These, Keldrick had to fend off while chasing down a tamed rabbit-like creature with no legs and a body that was mostly mouth Ritzia had taken as a pet. It had taken some doing, but he managed as he always did. It was as these two were headed back to the village that the real tragedy began to occur. From the land of Lorimar, its king, Stroud, had come for an unknown purpose, invading the island. Keldrick and Ritzia decided that the best course of action would be to awaken the guardian beast sleeping beneath the roots of the great tree to drive the invaders away. The roots ran deep into the ground though. The two talked with each other to ease the tension as they made their way down until they reached a chamber in which stood a slab of stone with the image of the tree engraved upon it. Just how far down does it go? There's no sign of the guardian beast yet, and we've already come so far. Keldrick had been looking around the chamber as he spoke, and had noticed a flash of light near the stone monument. It was a single seed attached to a sturdy vine. Curiosity got the best of him, and he pulled the seed away from the vine to show to Ritzia. What do you think this thing is? Before Ritzia could answer, there was another flash of light from the seed. Oh no, drop it Keldi, hurry. Keldrick, confused, had held onto the seed for just long enough, and it sprouted in his hand, growing into his flesh until his arm was covered in vines. He screamed out in pain during the process, and when it was done, in his hand, sprouted from the vines, was a sword made up of amazingly stiff plant matter. Somehow, he could will it to shrink back into his hand as well as use the vines as a whip or even a bow. Even through this shock, they pressed on until they reached another wide area with flowers growing all around. As they looked for the next place to go, 8 orbs of colored light flew about before converging in one point directly above their heads. From this light, a spirit child was born. She introduced herself as Faye, and followed Ritzia and Keldrick further down, lending magical support to Keldrick's fighting. When they had finally reached the bottom, the beast was nowhere to be found. Instead, a giant crab-like monster resided in the cavern. After a long and arduous battle, Keldrick felled the beast who told them not to wake the great tree with its dying breath. Ritzia, though, was lured to a root of the tree that was not yet petrified by a voice that only she could hear. Once she touched it, a darkness surrounded her. Outside, the tree shined brightly in welcome of the maiden's touch. Not long after Ritzia touched the root, King Stroud and his golem army found and captured them. Ritzia, Keldrick, the village elder, and another guard named Lekius who was a longtime friend of Keldrick's were brought to the stone dais under the tree. Hey, now that you're all here, you will tell me how to open the door to Mavolia. Stroud pointed his sword between the eyes of the elder who merely shook his head. Mavolia? But Illusia is supposed to be a holy ground. Lekius was silenced by one of Stroud's golem guards. Fool, this island is the very door to Mavolia. Now tell me, if you open the door to that cursed land, the whole world will be enveloped in darkness. Thanatos' spirits will corrupt every living thing on the planet. Stroud grinned maniacally. You think I care what happens to this world? Keldrick had enough of the talk. In his desire to protect Ritzia, he brought out the sword and attacked Stroud who merely threw him to the side. So, you'd rather I kill everybody? Let's start off with that tree maiden. Stop. The key to that cursed place is deep in Wonderwood. The elder cracked, moving to help Keldrick back up. Hey, you're easy to sway. Take them away. Lekius and the elder supported Keldrick while the golem guards led them back to the village. There's something about that boy. Stroud looked thoughtfully at his hand as his masked advisor come from seemingly nowhere. Well, he does have that sword after all. The tree must have splintered off and planted itself in his arm. Stroud shook his head, turning to face the other man. No, that's not it. Never mind. It's nothing. Back at the village, Keldrick and Lekius had escaped, and stood under cover in front of the village gates, plotting a way to retrieve Ritzia, who was to lead the Golem army to the key in Wonderwood. "Listen, Lek, the village needs you to stay back. I'll go get Ritzia." Lekius nodded, and Keldric ran off, Faye flying close behind. What was that? Lekius watched Faye in wonder. Keldric tore through monsters and the Golem army single-handedly. Over rolling plains, through old ruins, and the deep wood. At the end of it all, he found Ritzia, who had managed to escape, talking to the guardian of the woods, a giant sentient tree, known as Trent. Soon though, the key that Trent was hiding began to react to Ritzia, corrupting him and twisting his form into that of a dark mirror version of himself. Steeling himself up, Keldric had Ritzia retreat before he went into battle with the grim Trent. He used fire at the base of the tree to open up the weak spot, an eerily glowing mass of crystal inside of the tree's mouth. Soon enough, the crystal shattered, expelling a high volume of ink-black mist. Before the mist cleared, a black, slightly organic-looking sword flew from Treant's mouth as he returned to normal. I kept that filthy sword locked away in my body for so long. But it seems I've reached my limit. Treant's body began to glow softly as he started to fade out of existence, his life up. Bearer of the sword, you must go to Mortmont and seek the retainer of the earth. With these words, Trent faded from existence. Behind them, the masked man appeared, flying into the clearing on the back of a dragon, and lifted the sword from the ground. A sword made by the power of the spirits and anointed in the dark power of the echoes. This is truly the holy sword of Mana. As he spoke, the blade began to glow with a dark energy. I think I'll have you accompany me on my errands. Ritzia placed herself in front of Keldric, arms spread wide. Keldi, run. Keldric looked at the girl in concern. But, Ritzia. She looked back over her shoulder, tears forming in her eyes. Please Keldi, you have to go. For the sake of the world. Keldric understood, and much as he hated it, he ran at full speed towards the mountain. Foolish. I have a good idea where he's headed. There's no way to escape from me now. The masked man raised his hand, and the dragon he had ridden on flew off after Keldric. Once again Keldric was on the run with a horde between him and his goal. With firm determination, he cut his way through, Faye lending her magical abilities to heal and empower him, as well as weakened incarnations of the spirits who transferred their power into fragments that Keldric could fire from the vine bow. In this way, he made it to the peak of Mortmont to find Gaia, a sentient stone face carved in the side of the mountain that held the knowledge of the ages. There the dragon caught up with him, and with Gaia's help it was defeated. Gaia, however, was too hurt in the fight and disappeared much like Trent, but not before freeing Flammy, the guardian beast, from his care. Flammy and Keldric, and a surprise ally in the form of Watts, a king from another land, drove the Golem army from the village, only to learn that Ritzia had been taken to Stroud's battleship at the coast. Leaving Flammy to further protect the village, Keldric rushed to the beach. As always, Stroud's Golem army was there to get in his way. Though he was becoming increasingly skillful with the vine sword, he was careful to take out anything he was seen by and boarded the massive ship. Soon enough, he found Ritzia, but she wasn't herself. Almost as if she couldn't see him, she spoke in riddles to herself. Keldric led her up to the deck of the ship while trying to find a way to escape, but Stroud was waiting for him, and in his hand was the dark sword. Keldric was still no contest for the man who had increased his strength through his use of the black sword of Mana. After a brutal fight, in which Keldric managed to hold his own, Keldric began to glow with a brilliant light in his determination. His sword had also gained the same light, and a mark in the shape of a dragon appeared under his left eye, matching that of Stroud's. With a battle cry, he charged Stroud, who turned the cannons on the ship's deck towards him and fired. Faye used her powers to create a shield to lessen the impact, but the blows still threw him from the ship and into the ocean. Stroud, seeing that he still wasn't finished, fired the cannons again, and was satisfied by seeing the light fade. Ritzia, returned to her senses, saw this and lost all hope. As Keldric drifted across the waves, dark powers stirred in Illusia. Ritzia and Stroud opened the door to Mavolia, freeing the Thanatos spirits. Every one of the villagers in Illusia were corrupted by the spirits, those of weaker hearts transforming into dark wraiths. The boy washed up on the shore of the mainland, and checked on Faye. There was a bright light, and the spirit child changed before his eyes, becoming more adult. Keldric was found by Watts, who was forced to retreat from the isle. Together, they wandered the world for many months, rescuing those whose hearts were pure enough that they were not possessed, and gathered a resistance. Their final battle was at the castle of a land called Jad. Keldric stood among the dunes, waiting for the right time to attack. "Keldy, what are we going to do after this?" He looked over at Faye, who was floating just beside him. "After this, we go back to Illusia. No more wandering for us." Faye nodded, and the time came to move. After breaching the gate and entering the castle, they were confronted by a large glowing sphere with several smaller spheres orbiting around it. These, one small boy had told him, were made by a guy with a bow, and grim beasts emerged from them. Through arduous fighting, the orbs were destroyed one by one, allowing access to the upper floors. Surprisingly, there was a city under siege within the very walls of the castle. After destroying even more of the spheres and liberating the townspeople, the top floor was reached. There, Keldric came face to face with something that chilled his very soul. Lechius, consumed by the Thanatos. "Ah, Keldy. It's good to see you again. Ritzia wants to see you too, you know. If you give yourself to the Thanatos, I can take you to see her." Keldric shook his head, emotional torment playing out in his eyes. "You know I can't do that, Lek." Lechius closed his now blood-red eyes and took a deep breath. "That's too bad. You see, I've been ordered to retrieve the seed of the tree whether you're alive or not." Keldric felt the bile rise in his throat all through the battle with his once best friend. In the end, he won out, killing Lechius in order to free him from the Thanatos. In a final moment of clarity, Lechius told him to return to Illusia and free Ritzia. Keldric and Watts had formed a plan for returning to Illusia. There was a tower that would temporarily weaken the Thanatos when activated, and that would be when Watts could make landfall. Of course, it was Keldric that would climb the tower and activate the mechanism. The landing was rough. Keldric passed out, and woke up in the forest he had chased Buju in, by a tree that he had once carved his and Ritzia's names in when they were young. Ritzia was there, but wasn't quite herself again. After urging Keldric to kill Stroud and take his place, which Keldric refused before rushing off, pushing all thoughts aside from his mission out of his mind. Everything went smoothly until just after the machine was turned on. The masked man made another appearance out of nowhere. "Just a moment, Keldric." Keldric turned around, surprised at the voice. "You again?" The man nodded, taking a few steps forward. "The journey ahead will be a challenging one for you." Keldric looked down at his vine-covered arm. "Probably." The masked man took another step forward. "At this point, I don't think you'll be able to finish what you started." Keldric drew out his sword, readying himself. "Maybe not, but I'll try. I don't have anything to lose." In a flash of light, a long, thin sword appeared in the man's hand. "Well then, I am neither human nor corrupted by Thanatos. I maintain the knowledge of a millennia, and my soul wields the spirit's power. I shall open a path for you. See if you can outdo me, Keldric. But I shan't hold back." It was yet another brutal fight. The man wasn't lying when he said he wielded the power of the spirits, and he used that power to great effect. Eventually though, Keldric persevered and cut him down, only for him to stand right back up. At the moment Keldric cut the man, his sword began to glow brightly on its own. In his words just before he too vanished, the man revealed that he was the one who first held the sword that Stroud bears, and that it was he who sealed the first tree maiden away when both she and the sword became corrupted by Thanatos. He also revealed that Stroud was Keldric's brother. Of course, Keldric was shocked at the news, but logged it away for later. There were far more important things to dwell on. Watts had made landfall, and had formed a beachhead, from there going on towards the ruined village at the base of the now black tree. It was easy enough for them to make it through, but at the end, near the caves, Keldric fought the golem general. He won out of course, but the general blew himself up at the mouth of the caves, collapsing them. He was at a loss on how to continue when Flammy came out of hiding to find him. With the sacred beast's aid, he made it to the top of the tree where a fortress had been built. It wasn't as easy as before. It could have been fatigue from fighting through the tower, and then a battlefield, but Keldric had to fight tooth and nail to break through. Eventually, he found his way from the top of the tree, down, using a network of tunnels that had been hollowed out. When he finally reached a large set of gates, he had to pass through the strongest of the golems that he had fought. Winded and worn, he passed through the gates to find Stroud sitting on a throne with the black sword in hand. "So, You survived 18 years just to come back and annoy me? Well done, dear brother. Ignoring him, Keldric looked around the room. Where at Ritzia? In answer to his question, there was a plume of black mist on another throne, and Ritzia, having taken the dark form of the first maiden, Anis, stood up. Why did I throw you into the sea in the first place when I should have finished the job properly from the start? No matter, I'll just do it now. First, let's cast off some dead weight. Having paced to behind where Ritzia stood, he plunged his blade through her back. Keldric caught her before she hit the floor, but she soon vanished. Bathed in Ridda's fury, Keldric stood, blade shining brightly. He and Stroud fought nearly dead even this time, though Keldric had become a better swordsman. When Stroud seemed to be on his last legs, things took a turn for the worse. Ever hungry for power and unwilling to believe he could lose, he called more and more Thanatos into his body, changing his form to that of a giant wraith. Still, Keldric fought on and destroyed this form as well. Stroud returned to his previous shape, prone on the ground with the black sword just within reach. Ah, you never wanted to save the world, just the girl. And I've already killed her. So, what will you do next? Keep running in circles, slashing at anything that gets in your way? A fate fitting a brother of mine. Build a new world. A world of darkness, using your blade, freshly anointed in blood. With crazed laughter and black mist, Stroud faded from the world. However, from the mist sprung the form of Anis. As if reading the look on Keldric's face, she spoke. That man's sword could not kill me. Even that shiny blade of yours cannot destroy me. Keldric reached for her, but she floated up into the air. Ritzia. She looked down on him, contempt clear in her eyes. Ritzia? She no longer exists. Tonight, the real destruction begins. And when we have the full power of the tree and the spirits, the echoes will finally be free. Before Keldric could say anything more, Anis vanished further into the tree. Keldric ran deeper in, his breath ragged. He fought through twisted passageways that led to a distorted room, returning to this room several times, but walking along a different wall each time. Eventually, he made his way to a chamber with no floor. Somehow, he was able to stand over the empty space. Anis stood in the center of the chamber, waiting for him. You will soon prostrate yourself at my feet, just like your friend did. Keldric narrowed his eyes, glaring at the one who took Ritzia's body. The world is already like Mavolia. What more could you possibly do to it? Anis wasn't fazed. The echoes are not completely free. They need the seed from your right hand, and the aid of that spirit child. Even now, the great tree struggles to thwart the release of the echoes. But, I should be able to convince it once I have the seed the tree spawned, and the Thanatos take you. Keldric took a step forward. Then, what Ritzia said that day in the forest was. Anis turned around, continuing on. Yes, I made the girl say those things, but I believe she was thinking about something else at the time. She realized that the only way to revive the great tree, which had been accumulating echoes for so many years, was to open the door one again. And in opening the door, she learned one more thing. To revive the great tree, the keeper of the seed must become one with the liberator of the echoes, Bu piercing her through with his sword. She turned about again, blood-red eyes glittering with malice. That's why Ritzia is actually looking forward to being slain by you. Keldric looked down, uttering a single word. No. Anis began to gather her black power. And now, it's up to you, O Keeper of the Seed. Will you help me release the echoes, or destroy them, and Ritzia? Keldric brought his blade up, steeling himself. I see you've made your decision already. Well then, I'll drink a toast to the echoes, with a chalice of your blood. As her power gathered, Anis changed into a terrifying form. Much like the Medusa of legend, riding atop two great serpents joined at the tail. Keldric could not even scratch her unless he weakened the snakes, and then that only gave him a moment to deliver any sort of damage to Anis. Through a battle of attrition that left him severely weakened, he eventually won out, returning Anis to her usual form. Raising his blade to deliver the final blow, memories of Ritzia rushed in, and he found himself unable to strike. It's no use. I tried, but I couldn't do it. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he fell to his knees. Faye spoke in a kind voice. Keldy, let's go. Keldric looked up, trying to stop his tears. Yeah, but Faye. Faye shook her head. Ritzia wouldn't want a world enveloped in darkness. She wants you to make the world beautiful like it was before. Follow the voice of your heart, Keldy. Ritsuya and I are always with you. We wouldn't let you carry this burden all by yourself. All the while they were talking, Ennis had gathered some amount of her strength back, but turned around to see Keldric wrapped in light, and his sword shining brightly, Faye lending her power to him. Ritsuya, I didn't want it to end this way, but you know I have no choice. With a pained cry, he charged forth, striking Ennis through the heart. Suddenly the world was bright, and he and Ritsuya were floating in the vast white. They extended their hands towards each other, and once they touched, the seed that planted itself in Keldric's arm reverted to normal in Ritsuya's hand. Ritsuya, it's time to go. Faye gently floated down with Ritsuya, away from Keldric who was still trying to reach out. He watched as Ritsuya, Faye, and the seed combined and then vanished. Outside, the tree began to glow, pushing back the darkness that had flooded the world. The castle that had been built in its boughs crumbled to dust, and multicolored light spilled forth. At the room of the seal, the great tablet cracked and broke down the middle, crumbling as well. Suddenly, the tree was wreathed in gold, and an ethereal woman appeared over it. Spreading her arms as if to embrace the world, the lights spilling from the tree took the form of the spirits, and then a great sword appeared in her hands. This was instilled with the power of mana, and dropped to earth, embedding itself in the ground nearby. Keldric, beaten and exhausted, looked over the village he called home. With a sad smile on his face, he turned his tired blue eyes to the tree, seeing in it both the faces of Faye and Ritsuya. He made his way to the base of the tree, and lay down in a bed of moss between the roots, falling asleep for the very last time. Naruto himself was holding back tears, while all around the table were doing the same, save Sasuke who seemed to be logging the whole thing away. That is a life that I have never lived, but have experienced many times. Inari, I don't think anybody can know suffering as Keldric did. That is why I can always move forward, because I have followed him, and I know his pain. We must always move forward for what we want to protect. Never forget that. Shikamaru suddenly understood why he had been telling them that particular story. Naruto, that thing on your arm then. Is that really what I think it is? Naruto flexed his fingers, looking down at the silver gauntlet. Ah, this is the sword of mana that has been sleeping for centuries. I'm sorry I kept it secret from everybody, but I didn't want to be looked at any differently than you would any other ninja. I wanted to earn everybody's respect the right way. TCH. Dobi, you have a thing like that? No wonder you always beat me. You just relied on that to get the job done for you, didn't you? All eyes turned to Sasuke, and all aside from Sakura contained hard glares. Naruto merely waved it off. You know Sasuke, you might just want to consider something. Why is it I haven't used this? He flexed his fingers again for emphasis. On anybody until now? I couldn't. You saw what using it did to me. I'm down on my dregs after a few seconds. No, this is something I will only use when it's truly necessary. I may just decided to keep it unbound for a while though. The blonde, who had been eating throughout his story, set his chopsticks down and stood back up. If anybody needs me, I'll be wandering the village. With that, he limped out into the night. Kakashi cleared his throat, glancing at Asuma who had regained his composure. We have decided that during the downtime, Naruto will help Tazuna out at the bridge. In the meantime, Sasuke, Sakura, you will be learning from Ino and Hinata. Shikamaru will be assisting Naruto. Outside, Naruto took a deep breath of the chilly night air. He was on a mission now. His friend had given him a request, and he meant to fill it. However, he was having a rough time finding just the right material to use. That was when he saw it. Discarded at the edge of town was a lump of obsidian. Grinning, he reached for one of his storage scrolls and added it to his collection. When he turned about, there was the small form of Inari watching him. Naruto, I'm sorry I acted that way. I was only thinking about my own problems. Naruto lifted his hand to stop the small boy from continuing, a kind smile on his face. It's alright, we are all selfish at times. Hey, think you could help me with something? I've got an order to fill, and I'm going to need an extra pair of hands to help out. Think you'd be up to it? Inari smiled and nodded, moving forward to help Naruto walk towards the town's only forge. The rest of the group saw very little of Naruto and Inari for the next few days. Shikamaru was stationed at the bridge to protect Tazuna while Ino and Hinata struggled to help Sasuke and Sakura learn something as basic as tree-walking chakra exercises. Ino had decided to work with Sakura, who learned it quickly after a healthy amount of one-sided argument about how she was winning Sasuke over. Hinata was having problems though. Sasuke, ever proud, just wouldn't take her advice, and had even tried picking fights. On top of that, she couldn't even count the number of times he made suggestions that she help rebuild the Uchiha clan, as he put it. In 3 days, Naruto and Inari had finished their work. Bandages were wrapped around Inari's hands, and he handed a blade of moderate length to Shikamaru. "Here, bro, and I finished it finally. Lazy bastard had me do most of the work though." Naruto chuckled, ruffling Inari's hair. "Don't let him fool you, he really just ran the bellows and fed the fire. The kid was the one who wanted to learn though, and now he's got his start." Shikamaru shook his head before unsheathing the straight blade. His eyes widened at what he saw. The blade was made of jet black obsidian with flecks of deep red. At the base of the blade was a silver design that resembled stag antlers. The hilt and sheath were both jet black, and nondescript to fit Shikamaru's style of staying in the shadows. Kajiojika's a little brittle compared to Metal Blade's Shika, but his bite is better by far. Don't go blade to blade with him, and you should be just fine. Shikamaru grinned, kneeling to thank Inari. Sasuke shot a glare to Naruto, puffing himself up. "Oi, Dobi, why is it only he gets something good? Make something for me too. Make a sword just like that one." He gestured to Tsukihitsume at Naruto's hip. Naruto merely blew a sigh. "You know, Sasuke, you still haven't really learned anything yet, have you? I don't care what kind of troubles you've had, or whether the council thinks the sun shines out of your ass or not. Nothing gives anybody the right to demand something that they don't deserve. What reason do you have for me to do anything for you? Because you're the last Uchiha? I'm the last of my clan as well. Because you lost your parents? I've never even met mine, or known the feeling of a loving family. We're a lot alike in most regards. One of the only differences between us is that I work for my strength, and I don't complain when nothing goes my way. You expect everything you want to be given to you on a silver platter. No, Uchiha, you will have nothing by my hands until you prove yourself worthy. I make these weapons to protect my precious ones when I can't be around. You who reject even a helping hand would only hurt yourself with one." Sakura was livid. Here Sasuke was, giving Naruto a chance to finally be useful, and he threw it back in his face. He had belittled Sasuke's past by claiming to have just as hard of a life. She was about to let loose when she was stopped by Kakashi placing a hand on her shoulder. "No, leave him alone. Maybe this will start Sasuke thinking about his own attitude. You could use a look at yourself as well, you know?" Naruto waved, heading upstairs to get some sleep before the next day, but as soon as he lay down and closed his eyes, he delved into his mindscape. He saw Yuko there as usual, kneeling in the grass, but Jin was strangely quiet. "Yuko, sorry I haven't been here in a little while. I've been a little busy outside as I'm sure you've noticed. I need answers now though. What exactly happened to me back at the fight with Zabuza? What was that strength?" Yuko closed her eyes, breathing a deep sigh. "First, I should tell you this. It would seem that my power is not as cleansed as we once thought. Though the sword has changed me from a demon, it is still a caustic power to all but myself. That said, I used my influence over your chakra system to bridge Jin's power into you directly. This has severely weakened both you and him. He knew this though. He was the one who convinced me to act." Naruto knelt in front of her, taking a deep breath. "So that's why I've been feeling off the last few days. How much damage was done to my chakra system, and how long until it's safe for you to work on? In this battle with Zabuza, I'll need all my strength." Yoko looked away, trying to hide her eyes. I don't know. Naruto, if I had known what that would do to you, I would have never allowed it. When I give you my power, it already puts a serious strain on your system, but when Jin added his." Jin's light, airy voice sounded from all around, though he sounded more tired than usual. "What Yuko is getting at, is that we nearly killed you with that little stunt. Your chakra paths were almost completely shot. She has been working tirelessly to restore you. By tomorrow, you should be able to fight effectively, but you won't be fully recovered for several weeks to come. That is a power that you will one day be able to harness at will, but not until Yuko is entirely purified. That itself may take many more years. The sword is still weak. It requires more of the spirits to regain its full potential." Naruto stood, placing his hand on Yuko's shoulder, squeezing gently. "Don't worry about it. We'll move on as we always have. Take it slow and steady. He was interrupted by something he heard outside of his mindscape. It sounded like both the slow dripping of water and the clear chime of a crystal bell. Jin chuckled to himself. Well now, perfect timing as ever. Naruto opened his eyes and looked around. It appeared to still be around midnight, and everybody save Kakashi was asleep, the latter taking the caution of a night watch. Silently, Naruto slipped out of the building, following the strange sound for nearly an hour before he stumbled upon a forgotten ruin in the center of a lake. Curious, he strode atop the water, moving slowly to avoid straining his already damaged body to the center of the structure. Heeding a familiar feeling of being called, he sat in the center of a shallow pool of water. He was mildly surprised to see a small portion of the water rise up from the pool and take the form of a small woman. Instead of legs, she had a long tail, much like that of a fish. Her skin, eyes, and hair were various shades of blue, and in her hand was a trident that looked like it was made of pink coral. Recognition set in for the blonde, and his eyes widened slightly. "You're Undine of the Water, aren't you?" She closed her eyes and bowed, glad to leave the introduction out, before speaking in a clear, gentle tone. "Yes, Naruto, I am. Welcome to the ruins of what was once known as the Water Palace. As you have no doubt guessed, I am showing myself before you, because you are ready. From me, there will be no test. I watched you during your struggle with Zabuza, and saw what I needed to see there. I will join you now. Who knows, perhaps my cooling presence may speed your healing." In a bright blue flash that forced Naruto to shut his eyes, Undine entered the gauntlet, a deep blue gem forming in one of the empty slots to mark her presence. Inside of his mindscape, a lake formed itself near the center of the plain. Yuko watched as it formed, curious until she heard Undine's voice. "Greetings, O mighty Kyuubi, brother Jin. I know you both were listening, so I shall not repeat myself." Yuko moved closer to the lake, looking down at her reflection in the water. "Yes, I understand. Please, just call me Yuko though. I left my demon title behind me several years ago, when Naruto first touched the sword." Undine took physical form over her lake, looking up at the sky. "Very well then, Yuko. Let us work together. Jin, it's time to pick yourself up, we have work to do." Naruto made his way back to Tezuna's house, sneaking past Sakura, who had picked up guard duty after Kakashi, easily and climbing back into bed. The next day came quickly, but before anybody else woke up, Naruto created a single shadow clone, sending it to work with Shikamaru while he went out to get his body back into shape. Away from other people, Yuko could heal him much faster. He still didn't want people to know about her yet, and that was agreed on by the three voices in his head. For the most part, he spent his time in deep meditation, forcing chakra to flow through his strained network so that Undine and Kyuubi could heal them to a decent level of capacity. Once that was done, he drew his blade and began to run through some of the basics of Kenjutsu. Before long, under guidance from Jin, he was trying to draw wind chakra into the blade at will. By the end of the day, he had made a minimal amount of progress in that regard, but he was conscious enough about his condition that he didn't work any further. Instead of even going back to Tezuna's place, he opted to sleep out in the open, seeing as his bunshin had yet to dispel. It was misty the next morning, as a figure of mid-height, and long raven hair made its way through a small clearing, bending here and there to gather various medicinal herbs. This same figure happened upon a boy, sleeping in the dew with a content smile on his face. The boy was immediately recognized as the same one who had fought and injured its partner, Zabuza. One purple-nailed hand went into the depths of its robe, grasping a weapon to take the life of the sleeping boy when it reconsidered. Instead, the blonde was shaken awake, and shown a kind smile. "Good morning." Naruto opened his eyes to these words, looking up into the face of a beautiful girl. He grinned back in return. "Morning. Didn't think any of the villagers would come out here this early." He sat up, easily working several kinks and cramps out of his muscles before noticing the small basket held by the girl. Moreover, he noticed exactly what she was picking. He leapt to his feet, gesturing at the gathering of plants. "That's some pretty potent combination there. I just happen to know a thing or two about herbal remedies and poisons. This looks like the last stages of a cure for temporary paralysis. Isn't that right, Hunter-san?" The girl was taken aback. How did you know it was me? The last time I was anywhere near you, I was under a mask." She took a step back, reaching for a hidden brace of kunai. Naruto merely continued his stretching. It's actually pretty easy. The androgyny, the voice, even your scent are all the same. I'm not an idiot, as much as a certain member of Kakashi's team would like everybody to think I am. Subtlety is one of a ninja's greatest assets. If you notice all the little things, you learn so much more about the world around you. He looked the girl dead in the eye, his fox grin returning. I'm not going to attack you here. There's a time and a place for all things. You didn't take me out in my sleep, I won't lift a finger here. If I may ask though, what should I call you? The girl relaxed slightly while Naruto knelt to pick a few of the herbs necessary for Zabuza's cure. Haku, you're not like most other shinobi, are you? Why are you helping me now, when I was about to kill you a second ago? The blonde stood back up, dropping a bundle of herbs in the basket. In truth, you two don't really seem all that bad to me. A man I look up to once taught me to look underneath the underneath. I'm sure Zabuza-san has his motives for what he does, as do you. He seems precious to you. By what little I've seen during this conversation, I could almost guess that you see him as something of a father figure. Most of all, I guess you could say I'm recruiting. Konoha could definitely use strong ninja like the two of you. If our goals line up, I would like to call you comrades. Tell Zabuza this. Uzumaki Naruto, the blonde genin, will someday unite the warring nations. In the case that something were to go awry, and open war should start, I would like his help. His eyes hardened as he looked towards the horizon. However, if I have misjudged his character, and he wishes to continue the endless spiral of war and destruction, tell him that I will end him the next time we meet. With a wave as he walked away, the blonde boy left Haku to her thoughts and further gathering. Soon enough, Haku had made her way back to Zabuza's base. The entire time she worked on preparing the remedy, Naruto's words echoed through her mind. So, he understands my motivation. How can he read people that well, after only a few minutes? Something happened to him in his life, I can feel it. Something that blew his heart wide open for all to see inside. Perhaps not the best thing for a ninja, but it seems to work for him. I wonder if we should take his offer or not. Zabuza-sama will know. He'll tell me what is right. She entered Zabuza's room in a daze to see the large man pointing his blade in the face of a small, greasy little man who must have been too dumb to be very intimidated. One more shot, Zabuza. That's all I'm gonna give you before I take matters back into my own hands. I know I have a lot of boys who would love to cut loose in that tiny little village. The man turned around and beat a hasty retreat, shoving past Haku who had been waiting in the doorway. Zabuza sighed, setting his blade back down before easing back into the couch he had been lounging on. Haku, what took you? I need to hurry up and get back on my feet. With a nod, Haku handed the remedy to Zabuza who downed it quickly, pulling a wry face. Nasty. The best medicines always are though. Zabuza-sama, I met up with the blonde genin from before just this morning. He recognized me somehow. However, he didn't even make an attempt to attack, even though I was barely armed. Instead, he left a message with me, to give to you. He said that he will one day unite the nations, and that he wants our help when the time comes. He also said that if you intend to further the wars, he will kill you. Haku looked down at her hands as if they were the most interesting things in the room. Oh, so there's a brat out there with a dream like that, huh? Haku, what do you want to do? We've been wandering for a long time now. Even my original purpose has been nearly forgotten, and we've become thugs for hire to trash like that man Gato. Zabuza glanced over at his reflection in his Zanbato. Kiri, once I wanted to take it over by force, but I'm not so sure that was a good idea anymore. I vowed to get revenge on the damned Mizuki for shoving me into that test so long ago, but now he's dead from old age. Haku was surprised. She rarely ever heard Zabuza talk about his own past. In fact, most of their conversations revolved around two things: missions and her upbringing. He sounds earnest, but deception is a ninja's basic tool. I think we should continue the mission, but change the purpose. We should test Uzumaki. If he passes our test, we join him. If not, Zabuza's gruff voice finished her sentence. We'll continue as always. Fine, 2 days from now we mount our attack at the bridge. The events there will determine our fate. That's all for now. If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments.